Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Please roll call, please.
Councilmember Barrett.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Bidwell.
Here.
Councilmember Ellis.
Here.
Councilmember Gazelle.
Here.
Mayor Kajewski.
Here.
Councilmember Cusick is not here. Councilmember Seaver.
Present.
And I understand Councilmember Doug is very sick, so we'd like him to be excused.
So moved. Second.
Support. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
On pages 4 to 9 are the minutes from the May 15th regular meeting. Please review, and if satisfactory, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, on page 10, we have the closed session meeting from May 15th. Again, we're accepting the minutes for the record. I need a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And on pages 11 to 15 are different commission and committee minutes. I need a motion to accept in the public domain.
So moved.
Support. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This is the best part of the job, when we honor our very, very accomplished residents. Doctor? I see you ride your bike on Lake Shore. This is a great honor. Whereas Dr. Louis Sarabolis, a resident of Brooks Point Shores since 1998, was recognized as the 2018 St. John Guild Honorary Physician of the Year. Dr. Sarabolis has served his community on numerous occasions, and whereas Dr. Sarabolis is an infectious disease specialist and holds the position of chair for the Department of Medicine at St. John's Hospital Medical Center. He's also a professor of medicine at Wayne State University and St. George's University, Granada. Dr. Sarabolis has been involved in the education of medical students, residents, and fellows in infectious diseases throughout his career, and continues to proceed to exemplify the meaning of loyalty to one's community. Whereas Dr. Sarabolis attended the University of Michigan, where he graduated with honors and matriculated to the University of Michigan School of Medicine. After graduating from med school, he completed his residency in internal medicine and a fellowship in infectious disease at Henry Ford Hospital, as well as postgraduate studies in microbiology at the University of Michigan. Dr. Sarabolis then joined the faculty at Henry Ford Hospital as an epidemiologist, and within 3 years was appointed the Division Chief of Infectious Diseases. He has a prolific research career with over 500 publications, abstracts, and chapters, and his research has contributed to over 25 antibiotics. Dr. Sarabolis received the title of Master in 2004 from the American College of Physicians in the field of medicine, and in 2017, the Lifetime Achievement Award. His efforts are an illustration of dedication to one's community. Now, therefore, this 19th day of June, Mayor Ted Kajewski, on behalf of the City Council and all the residents of Grosse Pointe Shores, share in the pride felt by Dr. Sarabolis' family and congratulate him on this outstanding achievement and this latest honor awarded to him. Thank you. We also have our tile, and then we can go out and represent the community. You'll people say, "What is that pen?" Congratulations. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I will. I'll be brief. I just want to thank the council and all the people who volunteer for our community to make this such a wonderful place for us to raise our children and live, and especially our kids who keep us in a safe area. We really appreciate all of the volunteer as well as the police efforts that occurred that made this a wonderful community for us to live and raise our children.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Lou.
And our second honoree, John. There you are. Look at that smile. Well, this award is for John DeWald, and he's also been a Shores resident since 1998. He was recognized as the St. John Guild 2018 honoree of the Lifetime Achievement Award. Dr. John DeWalt has served his community on numerous occasions, and for over 25 years, experience in the commercial real estate industry, specializing in the leasing and sale of offices, industrial and investment real estate. He has extensive experience representing investors, landlords, and tenants in lease negotiations, as well as site selection, property acquisition, development, and disposition. Mr. DeWalt continues to proceed to exemplify the meaning of loyalty to one's community. Whereas John graduated with honors in 1979 from Hillsdale College with degrees in economics, business administration, and accounting. Throughout Mr. DeWalt's professional career, he has developed a reputation for ethical business negotiations and practices, and successfully representing his clients in all aspects of the real estate business. He was the founder of Gay DeWalt and Associates, commercial real estate brokerage and development company. Prior to that, he was an associate broker with the Heyman Company, and previously a practicing CPA with the big firm of KPMG. Mr. DeWalt has an extensive list of professional affiliations, including the Commercial Board, Michigan Association, and National Association of Realtors, as well as the MECPA and the AICPA. His efforts are an illustration of dedication to our community. Now, therefore, this 19th day of June, Mayor Ted and the City Council, on behalf of all the residents, award this distinguished award and proclamation to you, John.
Thanks.
So, John signs around town, so you know how successful he is. Then we have also, like, I want you to go out with Louis with their pin and book and our tile, our specially crafted tile.
So much.
You want to say a few words?
Like very much. I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for honoring me like this, and all the council, and I thank you all for your time commitment for a wonderful village and hard work to make our village a wonderful place that we enjoy living in and raising our family.
Okay, well, thank you, John. John used to be the city clerk back then. Well, probably, what, 12 years ago, or?
90s.
90s, okay.
Time flies.
You were younger men then. Well, thank you, John. Thank you. That's the highlight of the meeting. All right, the next item is the presentation by Jim Morrow. Oh, there you are, Jim. Okay.
Is the presentation going to be on anything or not? No?
I don't know
Just-
if we put it in. We have copies.
That's okay. I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
others want to know. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for letting us tell you a little bit about the Grosse Pointe Youth Nautical Education Foundation. We're here tonight to provide some information. We're not requesting anything. So our foundation began in 2009, and it's a 501c3. It's actually headquartered across the street. It's Grosse Pointe Yacht Club. And we're a community outreach program that's dedicated to promoting national and international amateur sailing, maritime arts, and education, as well as water safety and community improvements. So we've focused on a lot of these things over a period of time. Presented a list of our directors, in addition to myself, James Anderson, Mark Weber, Sloan Barber, Ilya Varikin, Brian Garrity, Ted Everingham, Wally Cross, Jeff Latham, and Sean Schottefer, who's with me here tonight, and also the current Commodore of the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club. These are local folks who have been involved with these junior programs for many years and have made a difference in terms of our ability to be able to expand these programs. We raise our money through the Great Lakes Boating Festival and a Summer Breeze Party, which took place a couple weeks ago, the boat show that happens. The list of sponsors extend to St. John's, Grosse Pointe News, Genesis Cadillac, Edmund T. Ahee, Colony Marine, Latham Motor Village, Fifth Third Bank, and Sterling Insurance. So some very credible people that have supported our organization over a course of time. We also conduct a couple of raffles that we raffle off a Rolex and a Boston Whaler each year at the boat show. Again, those are how we raise our money, and then through individual donations, and we have 9 funded college scholarships funds, or college scholarships. These are perpetual named funds that we have, and I can talk more about those in a little bit. But this year we gave out 15 college scholarships. They're $1,500 scholarships, total of 72 so far to date, but 9 of them are perpetual, and those perpetuals are named scholarships. So, for example, the John and Marlene Bowl Perpetual Scholarship, or the Jim and Patty Anderson Perpetual Scholarship, those are 2, but just as an example, and those are funded in perpetuity, so those will be given away forever in their names. Qualification to apply for these scholarships is the youngsters have to have at least some experience in junior sailing or in high school sailing, someplace along the way to have a sailing tick in their resume, so to speak. So if they learned to sail junior sailors when they're very young and then went on to play football and other sports and so on, that's fine, as long as they were through the Learn to Sail program, they qualify. And we get quite an interesting list of youngsters that apply each year for the scholarship. Included in your package, and I won't read all the names, but was the list of each one of the young people who were received a scholarship this year. And they basically, this year, were 4 from Grosse Pointe North, 4 from South, 2 from Liggett, 2 from Country Day, 2 from Brother Rice, 1 from Eisenhower. So it was a nice cross-section of people from not just the Grosse Pointe community, but from the surrounding area as well. When we were preparing this presentation, one of the things that caught my eye a little bit was, as we talked about the 72 scholarships, is I made a little bit of a chart, which I included in your presentation, that showed the 72 in the schools that they came to or went to, the high schools. But what was most interesting, I calculated the ACT average for the kids for this year and for last year, just out of curiosity. An ACT score is 36 is perfect. So the average for the 15 this year was 30.7, and their average grade point was 3.79. So it tells you a little bit about the youngsters that are applying and the people that are involved in these various sports. So one of the activities that we're involved with is the Challenge of the Wind, which is a group of teenagers from the inner city of Detroit. They're recruited from the different schools that they have down there and through different programs. And we have been significant donors to that program over a course of time to try to help give those folks in the inner city an opportunity that we are so blessed to have out here where we are today. So we give them, this year we gave them a cash grant of $4,000, donated 5 Optimus dinghy boats and 2 floating storage docks, and then a new home on Belle Isle. So they're going to be this year located in the old Detroit Boat Club and moving from Keens Harbor, which is a significant upgrade. And on one of the pages where I showed the Challenge of the Wind, there was a picture of a tent that was in the background, and that was their clubhouse, basically, in Keens Harbor. So this has provided them with a significant update. And we've been working with them for about 5 years, and their program is about to double again this year. So it's really been very rewarding. So we've donated to them over a course of time a Tartan 10 sailboat. We've given them 2 420 sailboats, and now 9 Optimus dinghies. So they have a full-fledged program that they're going to be able to function on going forward. The high school varsity program has been very, very interesting over a course of time. In Grosse Pointe North, South, and Liggett, we fund them, their varsity programs, through our fundraising efforts. We provide added grants for travel when they have special travel programs. We are regatta sponsors, and we provide some extra maintenance money to help. This sport of sailing is a very expensive sport, obviously, and the high schools need a lot of help to make that happen. Interestingly, Grosse Pointe South has won the state of Michigan Sailing Championship 4 out of the last 5 years, which is really, really significant. So the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club has invested over $1 million now and has the finest facility for juniors and high school programs. We have 18 matched boats with sails, and we regularly have North, South, Liggett, Brother Rice, and Marion, and De La Salle sail out of here in the fall and the spring for the high school varsity programs. There was a picture of our facility in here. Obviously, others that don't have the copy can't see it, but again, the facility today that is operating is about as first-rate a facility as we have. Also, in your packet was a copy of our annual report, and that's also can be seen online on our website. But in that annual report, there was pictures of the youngsters and some QR codes that are on the bottom of the pictures. And Grosse Pointe North and Grosse Pointe South High School have their complete sailing year in pictures in that book. If you go on that QR code, you get a chance to see the high schools, and it gives them a chance to want to hang on to our annual report because it now has all their sailing resume in it. What we've learned is that high school sailing today is the fastest growing varsity sport in the state of Michigan. And in our region, which amounts to Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana, 54 high schools have added varsity sailing teams in the last 2 years. 54. And so this has really taken on across the country, not just in the Midwest. So in the local area now, there are about 150 different sailing high schools who have varsity teams that are now competing in our region, which is really, really pretty interesting. Grosse Pointe South, with all of that, with about 700 different high schools in total, qualified this year for the national championships for both the Baker Championship in San Diego and the Mallory Championship in Houston, which is quite an accomplishment to do both in the same year. So for the high school support, we support the regattas. As I've indicated, we finance their equipment. We're now able to bring in world-class instructors for clinics, skill building programs, and then we provide competitive grants. So youngsters that want to go on to an Olympic run or to some of these national championships apply to the foundation, and then we'll help to finance some of that program that they have, because those programs on Olympic basis and so forth are very expensive, and we can do that. So we're not just focused on the big kids. We also have programs for beginners, and we aggressively promote the Learn to Sail programs in age 7 through adult programs, and sponsor them in different events however we can. In 2019, next summer, in the end of July, we will sponsor the USODA National Championships here at the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club. And that'll bring about 400 to 500 little Optimus dinghies here during 1 week from all over the world. So it'll be a very, very big event. Lastly, we're involved in several other community events where we're sponsor for the Set Sail for Autism, and we're working on a couple of programs with the high schools now to try to further expand those programs. And our activities in regattas and high school varsity venues are exposing the Grosse Pointes to a much broader audience and enhancing the reputation of our community. We have people come in from all over the Midwest, and they come in and say, wow, we just didn't realize this was here, Grosse Pointe. So we think that we're really helping in that regard in terms of expanding some of our reputations, and we think it has a pretty good impact on our community. Also in your package, and you can see online, is our foundation, the endowment and the scholarship piece. The scholarship funds and the endowment has continued to grow each year, as you can see in here. And there's no pay given to anyone in the foundation, so it's all volunteer, 100%, all the way across the board. And with that, I'll entertain any questions. Try to keep it brief, but our purpose was really today to expose you folks, let you know we're located right here in the community, and we think we're making a pretty good impact on the community, and we thought you might like to know a little bit about it.
Thank you, Jim. It was very well presented. I think it's nice just to be aware, that there's an availability of money, for needy scholarship recipients, not just the high scholarship of the people applying. And I think in the past you sponsored an Olympic hopeful or an Olympics
We did.
sailor. I forgot her name, but I mean it's quite an accomplishment what you're doing.
Thank you.
So, are there any other questions? But I think we just, the Grosse Pointe community needs to be aware. I think when you mentioned it to me initially, I said, Jim, I don't think a lot of people are aware that this fund exists and that you're, helping all the people in the community. Yes, Mark?
Just wanted to add, this is a perfect example of the cooperation that has been built over a number of years with the Yacht Club and their presentation. I got a chance to see this earlier. I'm sorry it didn't come up here because I forgot to have Tom put the thing in the computer to work. But we'll have copies for people that need to, but, you know, they don't ask for much for us, but they cooperate on the very lowest level. And to hear again that they'll have this many people coming, world-class people to our community and the Grosse Pointes in general, is just great. So
We're proud of what you offer the community, Jim, and, you know, Commodore, thanks for coming, and you know, let's hope that you have a good growth in the next couple of years.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
The next item on the agenda is we have a new member to appoint to the Finance Committee. Chuck, you like to stand up? Okay. I'd like to recommend appointing Chuck Reifrock as our citizen representative to the Finance Committee. Chuck's an accomplished CPA from one of the big firms. He's got a master's degree in business way back when from U of D. He's done very, very fine work at Comerica Bank, where he retired some years ago, but he comes to all the meetings anyways. He's on the Pension Commission. He's one of our great volunteers. When you talk about volunteers, you're the guy. And so I'd like to appoint him to the Finance Committee. I need a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Support? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Welcome again, Chuck. All right, Jesse, we're getting to the nitty-gritty. I was at the Finance Committee, so I know what we're up against.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me here this evening. Jesse Vandekreek, of course, Principal and Vice President of Hubbell, Roth & Clark, your engineer. I'm here tonight to talk to you about a situation which involves a transfer of a sewage disposal district, the Northeast Sewage Disposal System owned by Wayne County to the Southeast Macomb Sewage Disposal System, just to the north of us. So I do have a brief presentation here that I'll try to get through relatively quickly. I know you've got a long agenda, but I would like to give you a little bit of history of why we're here today and what we're recommending moving forward. So we have been dealing with this issue for many, many years, actually. We have, what I'm showing you there is the flow discharge from the city of Grosse Pointe Shores into the Northeast Sewage Disposal System, soon to be SEMSD. And what you see there on the bottom is basically the cyclical flow throughout the day of what happens when the sewage discharges out of the community and into the collection system. The green line that's dashed on the bottom there is our limit. Our limit is 3 cubic feet per second. And as you can see, there are at least 3 occasions when we first started metering back in 17 where we went as high as 6 CFS, which is double our outlet capacity. And what that is, basically, it's directly proportional to the rainfall that the community sees. So at the top of that graph is rainfall, and at the bottom of it is the sewer system response. Next slide, Eddie. All of this is being measured from the Cook Road pump station outlet. So on this slide here, you can see the yellow dot. That's the intersection of Cook Road and Chalfont, where all of the Grosse Pointe Shores sewer collection system is pumped by the Cook Road pump station and discharged to the Kirby Road interceptor. Next click, Eddie. So last fall, the Finance Committee, knowing that we had these exceedances that we were notified by Wayne County about, authorized the installation of 4 distinct sewage measuring meters. And what you see on the right there is actually a breakdown by district of the areas that were individually metered to try to hone in on where our excess flow is coming from. Basically, what you see there is District A at the very north end and District E at the very south end. Those are the results. Dry weather flow, you can see from District A at the north is 149 gallons per capita per day, whereas down at the southern end of the city in District E, you see very high dry weather flow of 1,445 gallons per capita per day. So something's wrong there. That's dry weather. We're not even seeing rain. On the right-hand column, you can see it's exacerbated incredibly when we have a rainfall event. That southerly district is seeing over 9,000 gallons per capita per day, whereas an average of about 2,000 is still being seen in the districts to the north, which is far in excess. On the left side, you can see dry weather flow is supposed to be 120 gallons per capita per day. We're anywhere from double to 10 times that at the south end. I'll show you in a second. And as far as wet weather, when it rains, you can see that we are about 10 times that all over the place, and significantly above that at the south end again. So we need to dig more into this. Where's this coming from? Next slide, please, Eddie. What this is, folks, is a picture of the existing Lakeshore Interceptor at the very south end of the city. The Finance Committee authorized HRC to televise this and to actually go in and seal up the joints. The city staff actually heard what they experienced as a gushing sound coming from the manholes in that area. And sure enough, when we sent a camera down there, that's what was coming through. Eddie, if you could show the video. That right there was estimated by the underground specializing grouting contractor to be coming in at a rate of approximately 80 gallons per minute. Dry weather. That has nothing to do with rain. Because we're next to the lake, we have a high groundwater table. So our sewer system generally is under the hydrostatic pressure of the groundwater. We all know that the lake levels are up. We know that the pressure is higher on the system now than it ever has been. So we're starting to see this kind of activity. So what we've done is, again, the city authorized this project to be grouted. So this is just a quick depiction of what the contractors did out there. He inserted a grout packing device, centered it on that leaky joint, expanded that machine so the grout would be isolated to that joint, and then pump grout at a rate to where it would not be received by the void anymore. So we're filling up not only the joint itself, but any of the voids that are created around that pipe. And as you can see, this is just a couple hours later, after that packer isolated that joint, see the water sitting nearly still. So we got a good idea of what we need to do. The trick is finding all the areas in the city where the problems are. So back then, it was in September, we were seeing these flows, kind of a repeat. If you hit that again, Eddie, you'll see that as we continued on metering through the rest of the year, we had very significant reactions continued to reflect rainfall. So again, at the very top, up the middle of the screen, you'll see the big red line. You get the big, tall blue lines. When it rains, it really comes in. So our conclusion, of course, is that a lot of the infiltration and inflow, when I say I&I, that's a picture. You guys can keep that in your head. That's I&I, that gushing into the joints. So our goal is to try to get all that out, particularly working on that in the Lakeshore Interceptor now. 3 sections of pipe have been grouted. 2 of them have been lined. So we're in good shape. What we need to do moving forward, of course, is to develop continued field inspections and find out more areas where we have these. And we have a very systematic and comprehensive approach that we're going to attack later to address it. But here today, we need to talk about what we need to do just to continue to operate with this excess flow that we're experiencing. Next slide. So again, you can see that the Northeast Sewers Disposal System is owned by Wayne County. Wayne County is divesting themselves of their infrastructure slowly, and they made an offer to the Southeast Macomb Sewers Disposal District to purchase the district. So part of that involved the excess flow being contributed to the system by Grosse Pointe Shores due to this excessive infiltration and inflow issue. So we know that as part of that, a long-term capital improvement plan will be required. We need to come into compliance. So the trouble there is, though, is we got a couple issues. We got a legal issue. We got a memorandum of understanding that the city attorney, Mr. Renaud, will be discussing. And then we also have the actual excess flow fee methodology, because Wayne County essentially was letting us operate in a demonstrative fashion. This transfer agreement requires for us to come up with a plan to get back to where we're supposed to be. Because quite frankly, we're taking up capacity of the systems upstream that are supposed to be able to discharge in the Kirby Road Interceptor. Next slide, please, Eddie. It was very hard to see. The council members have this in their packet. But what we were tasked to do is the engineers were tasked to meet with Wayne County engineers, SEMSD engineers, and Hubbell-Roth and Clark's team of hydraulic engineers to address a reasonable fee for operating the way we are until we can get it out. Our first go-around, essentially, the group wanted us to participate in every single retention treatment facility upstream, including those in St. Clair Shores, Chapaton, Martin Basin is in St. Clair Shores, Milk River is just up the road here, actually nearly abuts Grosse Pointe Shores. And under that scenario, Eddie, if you'll hit the next slide, that bottom number, number 5, is the number that they came up with wanting to charge the city of Grosse Pointe Shores annually. It's almost $500,000. Completely unacceptable. We looked at it really hard from an engineering perspective to identify how Grosse Pointe Shores 3 CFS was impacting that entire system to where we should subsidize the cost of every single basin within the district. In fact, we argued that the only basin that we impact when we exceed our allowable flow is the Milk River Basin. Milk River discharges directly into the Kirby Road interceptor, passes right by Cook Road. So when we're putting out too much flow, they need to hold back equivalent flow and then treat it in a retention basin, settling, skimming, disinfection goes out to the lake. So we got them to agree that that's the only system we should be looking at because we're essentially subsidizing part of that system operation. So Eddie, if you hit the next slide, you can see that what we did was we looked at 3 years rolling average. And what we have is approximately a situation of an average of 20 million gallons per year that Grosse Pointe Shores is exceeding with their discharge limits. The bottom there, which is detailed out in the council package, is a methodology that looks at an average 3-year excess flow rate. And then based on our total percentage of the whole system, which were 2.37%, applied to that rate, comes out to approximately 118, 130,000, depending on the specific numbers that are utilized for annual operation and maintenance. So what we've done is we've got this proposed excess flow fee methodology reduced from an initially proposed $500,000 by the SEMSD down to approximately just over $100,000. 130 if we go up a little higher, if we go down a little bit. The nice part is under the agreement, it's a 3-year rolling average. So we shouldn't see significant fluctuations whatsoever in the annual excess fee methodology. And again, one thing to keep in mind, the whole point of this is to only pay this while we are exceeding our flow. The way the memorandum of understanding has been developed is that as we move forward to reduce our excess discharges to the system, this agreement and the fees and charges will go away. Okay? Next slide, Eddie. So what that's going to take is some work. You know, we got to get into the system. We know we can't go do it all tomorrow. We can't. It took us a while to find the one on Lakeshore, and it's taken a while to fix it. It's taken some money to fix it. So we know that we're going to be into some work here. We're proposing over the next 5 years, we essentially get into the system and conduct a thorough evaluation of it, remove cost-effective infiltration and inflow where it makes sense, and come back to the council regularly to present our findings and also to present budgets in order to accomplish the objective. So Eddie, you can just keep right on going to the next slide. As you can see, that's carried out for a number of years. So the short term, what do we really need to do? This is the only item that's in bold. Tonight, what really needs to be done in order to finalize this process and make sure that the district can be transferred from Wayne County to SEMSD is to approve the proposed excess fee methodology and memorandum of understanding at tonight's council meeting. Again, that is the critical item. The excess flow fee methodology is basically Appendix A to the memorandum of understanding that has been fully vetted by both the city's engineers as well as legal counsel. And then Eddie, you can just flip through the other ones. Short term, again, we'll be coming back to talk about all these other items that we need to do to kick off the program of identifying and removing extraneous infiltration and inflow. Those are just a number of the items. But really, number one is the key of why we're here this evening. We're looking for council to put forth a motion to approve the MOU and the excess fee methodology Exhibit A. And I believe that's it. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
But Jesse, if we approve it, that doesn't mean Wayne County will accept it, does it?
Yeah,
Well, actually,
it does. They've approved the contract.
Have they, but the methodology, I thought there was a difference of opinion.
the methodology, well, there was a difference of opinion for a good 2 months going through the negotiations process. Prior to our presentation to the Finance Committee last Tuesday, we had finalized those negotiations with the Wayne County engineers as well as with the SEMSD engineers. And quite frankly, moving forward, once the district is transferred to the SEMSD engineers, we will no longer be working with the Wayne County engineering staff whatsoever.
So there's no look-back penalty? I know that originally that was proposed.
It's explicitly removed. There was a look-back penalty that was initially proposed that we got removed. And there was also a punitive penalty, we believe, that was imposed here just in the last week that we got removed from the memorandum of understanding.
It would have been $80,000 a year.
Oh, wow. Good work.
Approximately,
Good
yeah.
work. Good work.
The whole point of this is that, here, the way to look at this is, we pay, our sewage bill right now is $750,000 a year for 3 cubic feet per second. This is, we're basically getting 6 cubic feet in high flow incidents. We're buying that 3 extra cubic feet for $118,000 to $130,000, so long as we, in good faith, go through a remediation plan to reduce the amount of inflow that's occurring, which we've already embarked upon 3 years ago when we got our SAW grant. This all started when we televised the sewers, we cleaned the sewers, and then we looked at what we were flowing, and we've tried to increase our allowable flow for years, but with no avail. Now remember that we're the only city in this whole district that's got a separated system. Our rainwater and sewer water are separated. So when we originally went to a separated system, we agreed, the administration agreed back then to 3 cubic feet per second. In hindsight, that was probably, we should have asked for more, or whatever the facts were. But this is where we sit now. So from the engineering perspective and from the legal, we've worked on this for for over, 2 years, Mark? The Finance Committee and everybody working on this thing. These guys have done not a good job, they've done an outstanding job. You couldn't put us in a better position where we control our own fate, where we have the right to remediate on our timeline, be good faith, things that we want to do. We have a SAW grant to enable us to do a lot of that. These sewer projects are things that we knew about. We haven't issued a bond in years because we knew this was going to come up. This is all part of that to really upgrade our infrastructure. So I think it's a winner all the way. It really is.
Correct. We have an existing collection system that's anywhere from 60 to 80 years old, and it's time that we address it.
Jesse, in those 5 zones that you identify, obviously the water table pressure would remain pretty much the same throughout those. So is the real issue that lake water is coming in through the seawall in Zone E?
I would not say that that is the real issue, no, because
Where's the
whether
water
the
coming
seawall is there or not,
Okay.
it equalizes on both sides. You have a hydrostatic pressure that's almost not variable, whether you're on the lake side or on the earth side. It stabilizes. If you dig a hole on one side of the seawall, you're eventually going to hit the same elevation as the lake. Okay, so a seawall is not meant to stop the lake from coming in. It's meant to stop erosion. But the high groundwater table is always going to be there. You're always going to have a groundwater table above your collection system. It happens to be a couple feet higher now, so we're probably seeing a little bit higher flows. But even if it was down to low lake levels just 5 years ago, and it was 2 feet lower, you would still have fairly significant infiltration and inflow. There's no doubt. And that's really because of the age of the collection system and all the open joints in it. cracked pipe, things of those nature that we can continue. Again, like was previously mentioned, the city already has televised the entire collection system. We've got that now. So now we've got to go through and analyze it and put up together a plan to tighten the thing up.
What is it about Zoni that makes it unique, and why is it failing compared to the other zones?
What's the one is the diameter of the pipe?
Okay,
It's the
Yeah,
biggest
that is
diameter.
the largest diameter of the pipe because you're at the
I get it.
downstream end of the system. So we would likely see lesser degrees of infiltration and inflow, let's say on a 12-inch storm sewer that's picking up, or a 12-inch sanitary sewer that's carrying sewage from, 20 homes on a block.
makes sense,
Much
okay,
smaller.
yep, all right.
I think, Jesse, you explained at the finance committee that we don't really have a very closed system compared to a newer community like Canton or Plymouth, and you indicated that the pipes really just sit, they're not connected. There's no gaskets between the pipes.
What we sometimes forget is the way this system was originally designed. It was a combined system. So it was designed to not only carry sanitary sewage from all the homes, but it was also designed to carry stormwater, rainwater, everything else. So when it was built, there were no joints in any of this pipe. They're very short laying lengths, typically old clay pipe. We get any kind of hydrostatic pressure and it just pours into the joints. Current construction standards, of course, with sanitary sewers only, are built with joints in the gaskets, modified joints, or sometimes even pipes with no joints at all if they're fused together. You see a lot of high-density polyethylene and polyvinyl chloride products together that have no joints at all, and specifically for that purpose. So for 100 years, 200 years, lifespan, stuff's supposed to never degrade, it's plastic, you're not going to have these similar problems that, we didn't have the technology available to manufacture those pipes back when this system was built in the early 1900s. So what you're facing, or what we're facing here, is really no different than the majority of the communities in southeast Michigan that were built out in the late 1800s, early 1900s. It's very common. It's just your time to get to it.
And Jesse, as we work on the weaker links, it's possible the pressure will move to the down the system, won't it?
No doubt. We found that on Lakeshore. When you can see that much pressure and that much water coming in, essentially what we would do is we would get one joint and it would be harder at the next one. And we'd get another joint. But we finally got to a point where we got them. We got through the first two lengths. The joints are not only grouted, but there's a completely new structural liner down 2 full lengths of pipe, and no more groundwater is infiltrating in those sections at all. So that's just a tiny little snapshot of what we need to do through the whole community. But
Okay.
again, the great part is, under the grant, you've televised it all already. So now it's really just doing the engineering to identify what the most cost-effective removal of that I&I is, which is going to involve a lot of this trenchless type of technology and construction over a period of time.
The good news is the technology's out there. We're not digging up streets.
Right.
You can do this, with remote cameras and lining equipment, so we're not going to be tearing up people's streets again and all that. It's inevitable. It's part of our community. I mean,
Yes.
I move that we approve the proposed excess fee methodology and MOU as amended.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Jesse, great work.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor and council.
Yeah, I was scared when I heard about the penalties and all the other things there before. So, good work. We have public comment. Any public comment? We have a lot of members of the public. Any public comment? Okay. Well, if not, then Rhonda, reports by chairpersons.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'll try to keep this under 45 minutes.
We got you on for an hour.
Beginning with your packet, you have a list of the wire transfers for the month of June. There's nothing unusual here, just normal things. Next month, we'll start adding some items as far as tax distribution. On your list of checks, there's a lot of pool and just park-related expenses, whether it's caulking, repairs in the swimming pool, clean and prep and paint of the swimming pool, along with the lifeguard uniforms and supplies. Also, there was a check issued to K&D Milk and Marine for the balance on the piling work that they did. Helen, of course, was busy buying some flowers. We also made our first payment to Nagel Paving Company for the tennis court project of $34,000.
Rhonda, what's the duck project at Champion Marine Services for $17,000?
Was that the pilings?
No, that was another vendor.
Oh, a different vendor.
Which page?
520, page,
It's deck board replacement, I'm pretty sure.
that's not covered under, that wasn't part of that warranty?
We maintained a supply of extras as the dock portion, not the big center portions, fail. We go back and each year have to replace some of those. I'm sure that's,
Yes,
we did it.
correct.
Okay. For a project that size, shouldn't we have been, I mean, we don't get told about that? $17,000?
We do it every year.
Okay.
I mean, we replace a little more every year. You know, the big thing that happened a few years ago was there was a whole system failure on the main docks of those boards. And Brian, again, and staff negotiated, but primarily Brian did, a settlement with the various vendors that brought us back into covered costs. A lot of that, including material, proper material being supplied. We have a supply of those, and each year we have to go in and do some more repairs.
Well, he didn't finish the work in the fall. We had authorized the building before to finish the finger docks.
That's true.
And he didn't get it done because of the weather permitting, and then he finished it this spring. That's what, because we approved it earlier, the amount.
Okay.
It's not a carryover amount from before.
And the intersection camera cost at $29,000? What is that?
What page are you on, or what check?
I'm on page 13 to RMMR Consultants for intersection cameras, $29,875.
Yeah, my check register is only 5 pages, or, okay, do you see the page number on your, on the?
Page 1.
Page one.
Page 1.
Check 1938, 520. Wait, 2015. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, what am I on? 2015.
you're in the wrong packet.
Rhonda, Butler Collusion, there was an accident?
Yeah, it happened in the Grosse Pointe Woods. One of our public works pickup trucks was struck by another vehicle, so that is being taken care of by the
We'll
at-fault
recoup that
drivers
from
and
insurance.
Yes.
You might open that.
And the payment to the schools for fiber optics for $3,100.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
That was just our share of preliminary work done, where we had agreed to participate through a certain level.
2018.
Okay.
And it's shared among all the cities, the school, and
Okay, and the lockup for 20,000, the Woods have, I know we're working on that, but we really haven't signed an agreement yet, have we?
that was our share. We did bring that to council of the excess over the grant that their bids came in on. So we did discuss that prior to issuing the check.
Okay.
We'll be bringing back a full agreement once the construction is virtually done.
Because the actual agreement, we haven't signed yet, right? Okay. Are there any other questions? And then WOW business for telephone and internet, that's 1864. So that's basically all our phone, computer, and,
Telephone, internet, and the surveillance cameras.
okay, so that's everything.
Yes.
Okay. And that's high-speed fiber optic. Right? Okay.
Yeah, those were moved to WOW once they came in the city and constructed the system from Comcast.
Okay. I need a motion to approve this check register run at the amount of $421,707. Moved. Is support?
Second?
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, also at the last council meeting where the council approved the city's tax rate, we did make an announcement that the tax rate was going down 1 mil because of the removal of the park renovation millage. But I just want to let you know, actually, the rate is down 1.1763 mils.
Nice.
A little bit extra, little bonus.
Favorable variance.
As far as tax bills, I'm waiting for one more entity to finalize their tax rates before I can start processing our tax bills.
Okay.
I should have that information by Thursday. The water bills have been issued, they're due July 6th, and it basically, total dollar amount is pretty similar to the same time last year.
Okay.
Just to mention, you probably realize that Macomb County is celebrating their 200th birthday this year. And as part of that bicentennial celebration, they have a torch run that's running through each community in Macomb County. For some reason, Grosse Pointe Shores was not notified. So on Friday at 4:53 p.m., the torch will be in Lake Township.
So some guy's gonna be running down Lake Shore with a torch, and we're just trying to tell residents not to call. He's gonna firebomb a house or something, is that it?
Well, police barricades then right there.
Yeah, so as far as I know, they're going to be running just up to the Ford House driveway and then turning around. But it would have been nice to have maybe the mayor run.
Well, I couldn't run. We'd find a suitable runner. I think Dr. Sarabulis, I think, would be our volunteer. At least I would recommend.
I just wanted to mention that will be happening this Friday. They start Tuesday at 6:22 in the morning in Harrison Township. And so from that point on, the last community will be downtown Mount Clemens at 9:45 the following evening, followed by fireworks. So just in case you want to tag along.
Okay. Next items are proposed budget amendments.
Yeah, you have a lengthy packet here. This is basically house cleaning for the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. I take my crystal ball, which is kind of fuzzy at times, trying to figure out how much more money we'll be spending along with how much more money is going to be coming in. So hopefully I've underestimated our revenues and overestimated our expenditures. That's what I always hope for. We're just approving the amended budgets on the governmental funds. The water and sewer and the marina fund being enterprise funds. Those pages are in here, but we're not really looking to change those budgets. It's just to give you an idea of where we're at.
Okay. Well, are there any questions? If not, I need a motion to approve these proposed budget amendments.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Any further discussion? Not all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed?
And then the one last thing is the preliminary audit was supposed to begin July 2nd, but due to my husband's surgery now being that day, it's been rescheduled for August 6th. That time they'll come out, work on the preliminary budget. If they have extra time, they'll actually start on the audit. And then on the week of August 20th, they'll be here to finish up the audit.
Okay.
So hopefully July and August, you probably will not see most of the financial packet. You will see the transfer page and the check register. So.
Okay. Rhonda, is Sandy Rodham, our actuary, finished her work and given us the numbers for the pension plan? And
No, I cannot start supplying her any information.
Till the end of the year, yeah.
So actually, I have 2 pages of her many pages required already completed today. Next week, I'll have the rest of the employee information to her.
Okay.
And then it's be about a month and a half before I have the investment numbers in to give her the financial data.
So sometime early August, probably?
Well, that's when she'll have it. Hopefully, we'll see something in September.
Okay. Okay, good. Thanks, Rhonda. Bruce, Finance Committee?
Finance Committee met last week. We discussed a variety of issues, including, extensively the sewer project and what's going on there. We talked about the retirement plan with the drop plan that we're going to talk later on tonight about. Again, we were waiting for some information on the actuary on that. We have not scheduled the next Finance Committee meeting, but we're probably going to be having one in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Once we get the actuary information for drop and that in everybody's hands, we can make a recommendation back to council on that as quick as possible. So we're busy as usual this time of year.
All right. Good work, Bruce. Good work. Chief, Public Safety?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I wanted to update you on the stolen auto activity that I described in some of my emails. Since late May, Grosse Pointe Shores and all of the other Grosse Pointes experienced attempt larcenies and attempt stolen autos, many of them successful. Grosse Pointe Shores had 7 vehicles entered with no loss. One vehicle, the window was broken on the vehicle and a purse was taken off the seat because it was visible. Collectively, the Grosse Pointes experienced 7 stolen autos within a 2 to 3 week period. One of these vehicles was taken from Grosse Pointe Shores. It was fortunately driven into Grosse Pointe Farms and abandoned with no damage. This vehicle was processed and returned to the owner. As I previously informed council, all 7 of these vehicles stolen in Grosse Pointe Shores had the key fobs inside the vehicle, which is an automatic start. We'd see the brake lights go on, and they start the vehicle by a push button, and they're gone. So none of the 7 stolen autos had the ignitions tampered. They weren't cracking ignitions or trying to compromise the vehicle in any other way. We cannot stress enough that keys and key fobs need to be removed from the vehicles. Some of them were in the owner's manuals. They had never been removed. And we just don't want to hand them our cars. This is, Grosse Pointe has become kind of an easy mark on this. And we encourage you to lock the vehicles, garage them if possible. All of the investigators throughout the Grosse Pointes did an excellent job. Lieutenant Rohr quarterbacked much of this investigation by getting all of the detective bureaus together and all working together. We had federal help because we had an incident that involved a federal agent, and so we had lots of manpower, but it was a fast and furious 4 or 5 days, search warrants, execution search warrants, arrests, consent searches, etc. So my hat's off to that whole entire crew, all throughout the Grosse Pointes. One subject is in custody. He was charged with 10 felonies. They violated his parole based on this arrest. And the second subject is identified by Grosse Pointe Park, and they're processing evidence at the crime lab before he is going to be charged as well. The suspect in custody was charged with 10 separate felonies in regards to these stolen autos.
Do they know how many are in the ring, or, I mean, I thought I heard.
For sure, and possibly there are people who have graduated to the administrative levels of these groups. So I'm being facetious, but that's how it works. You know, a lot of the times they send out the young kids to, these weren't teens, but many times they'll put out young kids that they know penalties are much less. Juveniles are handled in a totally different way than an adult. So many times that's an incentive. Any questions on that before I move on? I can.
I appreciate that it was solved. I mean, one was 20 feet from my bedroom window. I mean, you know, and so I just missed. I mean, it was an hour after I went to bed, I think. So
yeah, it was a great effort, and the fact that we got on it quickly and the detective bureaus all pulled together along with the uniformed guys. All this information went out. We knew what kind of car they were driving to the various locations. They'd lift the door handles, the doors were open, they'd try and start the car, but we identified through various different footage of camera data from the gas stations, etc. So it did help the crew, the DB crews. She's not here tonight, but I needed to recognize an individual, a resident, Fran Bachman, who is also the wife of Mayor Pro Tem Bruce Bisbal. While working with Trace on the Goose Project on Saturday, June 16th, she heard an individual that had fallen into the marina and was screaming for help. She went immediately. She assisted this individual, pulled her out of the water, and helped her get her jet ski back on the jet ski deck. So we're proud of her for her assistance, and she'll be recognized at the end of the year with the rest of the officers. So thank her for that. Finally, if you saw the Grosse Pointe News last week, you saw an article about the services provided to our department by our chaplain, Father Rich Bartosik. For 5 years now, Rich has been on hand to assist us. On behalf of all of my officers, we're extremely grateful to him for his service and his friendship. And I'd like to say a special thank you to Melissa Walsh. She wrote a great article and really gave a personal side to who he is. And he's a great friend, and he's a really an asset to the department. So
yeah, it was a wonderful article.
That's all I have. If you have any questions.
Any questions for the chief? Not. Good work, chief. Good work. Is Brett here? Mark, are you gonna do the
No, I have it.
Public Works?
Okay, bear with me, he left me plenty of information here. Oh. The Bellmead repaving is, bids due back on June 26th, and soon after that, he will schedule to have the work done on Bellmead. That road is in dire need of some major work. Blairmore is scheduled for $40,000 for the work, and that will be done sometime between now and early fall. Lake Shore and Vineyard Roads are scheduled to have forwards with crack filling and minor curb repairs, so you'll see a little bit of work around here for that. The annual flower gardening staff has been doing a great job keeping the community beautiful. Let them know that there's no flowers along the seawall in the park because of the high water. It washed all that out. I'll talk about that part a little bit later, but maybe to resolve that issue. And Mike Wade and his crew is making great headway. The street sweeper's been out through the village twice since the last meeting, which is keeps our city looking good. The tennis courts, the poster installed for put the fence up. That should be done very shortly. They've cleaned the courts. Our final grade on the courts are in. There'll be another week before they can do the coloring. They have to wait 2 weeks of curing time before that happens. They're doing quite a bit of curb and sidewalk work. And on pave that on the 11th. On the 28th, they're going to pave the entire park. So the park's going to be closed for 1 day. They're going to make arrangements to have access for the boats. I don't know how they're going to do that, but they're going to do that. They figure if they come in 1 day, they get it all done in 1 day. So there again, there'll be 2 weeks before they can do all the striping for all the parking spots. On the 28th is what the scheduled date for doing that right now. And the plan is to have the tennis courts and everything up and running for July 2nd. So for the 4th of July, everything should be back to normal, except for the striping in the parking lot. So bear with me on that part. And that's about all he left me right now. The Bellmead project's $215,000 and Blairmore's $40,000, just to let you know. And knowing Brett, he will screw up a few bucks out of that to get other work done throughout the municipality, as he's very good at doing that type of work. And that's all I have for Mr.
Good. Thanks, Bob.
Okay.
Do you want to carry over into the park committee? Part of it was already the park with the tennis courts.
The tennis courts, yeah. Well, I'm just giving out his report.
The driveway, or the parking lot. Of course, so everything will be done by July 2nd, Mark?
Yeah, in terms of the tennis court should be playable by then. And as Bob said, we will not have the striping in the parking lot because you have to let it cure for rain helps out a little bit. Usually it's 2 weeks and then we'll come back and stripe them.
Okay.
We're waiting final numbers, the entire bid package for the entrance and the construction road. Thought we might have them today. The Nagel is bidding a couple of big jobs and promised it to us by next week. I expect that since they're already in site, we don't have to pay
Staging.
remobilization or staging for it, that they'll be the proper entity. We have money set aside, as was talked about previously, for that project. And I believe that the engineering will start with the marking and...
So they'll stake out the road?
Yeah, stake out the road very shortly.
Okay, good. Does anybody want to add anything to the park? Matt?
Wi-Fi, what's the update on the Wi-Fi to the park?
We're working with the best way for us to do this is to tack on to the Wi-Fi by purchasing 2 or 3 extra antennas, a couple $100 each, to the Yacht Club program, and that won't be up until mid to about the 20th of July. But then we will have it. In evaluating the cost of going it on our own, this is a much better operation for us. And it's going to take longer, but ultimately we'll have really good service.
Okay, good. Harbor Committee, Matt?
Yeah, we basically are identifying the remaining handful of boats that are not in compliance with either having their pulpit or their stern exceed the size of the well. A lot of the boats have been retied. Chairman Seago has gone through the harbor on a weekly basis and taken an inventory. We are putting notices on those particular boats and asking the owners to either retie their boat or get together with Brian and Tom, and we've done a couple of swap outs. I don't know if Brian would like to deliver any comments.
Sure, I handed out 50 notices because a lot of boats are not in compliance. They're sticking out materially or overhanging the dock. There's a safety issue. As of today, there's 5 open slips. The rest of it is full. Hardly any algae we put in the harbor today, thanks to yesterday's noise. I spoke with Alex Turner about the weed harvester that's scheduled to be put in tomorrow. Seems like the silver bass are running. I don't know if there's there.
Brian, do we have our pumps on so that we can circulate the water? You know, where we've had problem areas, because, okay, I met with someone last Friday and they had an issue with our lack of circulation.
At that time it was on, but it was so far below the water you couldn't actually see its effects.
Okay, okay.
Well, Brian, I'd like to compliment you on your due diligence. I've seen a lot of the correspondence, and you know, I had the opportunity to be in the park on Father's Day, and harbor looks great. The boats, you know, there's a huge difference in the fairways now that the boats are not extending way out, or they're in wells that, you know, are way too small for the craft that should be in there. So great job on that. I know I talked to Chairman Seago about the seawall on the west wall of the harbor. There's no cap on that particular area, and all of the sheeting is just exposed. And it seems to me that, you know, we need to look at some type of a cap to go over that, just from a safety standpoint. If a kid decided to walk along that barefoot, like doing a tightrope thing, it could really slice a foot open pretty substantially. A lot of those sheets that the seawall are made out of are just sheared, and they have sharp edges on them, and they're just exposed. I mean, you could trip and hit that with your forehead or something. Not a good end result. So I think for very minimal cost, we could cap that and not only make it look better and create a little more structural strength, we could prevent a bad injury from occurring. And then lastly, I had a conversation with Tom. We're moving forward with the website page where ultimately residents will be able to reserve a well and pay for that well online, which will, I think, make it really convenient for residents. That's all I got.
Good report, Matt and Brian. Thanks for your help, because I know it's tough to stay current with the weeds and everything else, the fish, you know, that in the past, because we got such a tight corner. Infrastructure, Bob.
Well, Rocket Fiber is on the agenda for later on. Nothing got back from the Corps of Engineers for the major part of the seawall. We're working on a little bit of the seawall for the park where the water is washed out all about half the stone. Last year that cost $20,000 to replace all that, and half of it's back in the water. So we're looking at putting a little shield up to divert the water as it comes in and goes right back out. And hopefully next month I'll have more information when we're going to start that. And should be able to do it for a minimal cost.
Okay, good.
Deck that, and maybe put the gardens back, some of the flowers back in. Hopefully we can get the rocks out of the river, but I don't think that's going to happen, because they're down about 8 or 9 feet.
Wow.
The water's only about 6 inches below the top of the seawall.
Wow.
So it's really rising. Somebody told me it's supposed to rise maybe another 2 inches. So that's it, Mr. Mayor, for the
Good.
part.
Thanks, Bob. Shores Improvement Foundation?
Mr. Mayor. How's everybody? A quick update on your Improvement Foundation. As you may be aware, we had a meeting 2 weeks ago, the Projects Committee did. Still much discussion about the tennis court issue and the money it was promised to give to the council. I hope to have a better answer and a more positive answer for you after our next meeting in July the 9th. So I think we're looking forward to something good to come out of that. I'm waiting on a response back from our Gleis, the synthetic ice person down in Cleveland, Ohio. I invited him up to see our site. I'm trying to schedule a date with that now, get a price per cost or installation and whatnot. And other than that, again, we have had our trustee meetings for over a month. I will have one next month, and we'll be back to you in 4 weeks and give you some good news.
Well, thanks, Brett, and I appreciate you. You're serving as, again, a double duty as back-to-back presidents, for the Improvement Foundation.
Thank you very much.
Matt, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, Brett, for starters, I want to thank you for all of the time that you've put into entertaining my request of the foundation for the $100,000 towards the tennis courts. I'd also like to thank Lynn Kurtz for, calling a special projects committee meeting. And although the poll that they took at the meeting wasn't the result that I was hoping for, I really do appreciate you guys seriously considering it and weighing it out. And I'm hopeful that in July that maybe we can come up with some way that we can partner together on this.
I think we will. We'll have a full trustee meeting on July 9th, and we can look forward to some good news after that.
Great. Well, thanks to everybody for all of their efforts and, consideration.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett. I don't know if everyone remembers, the Grosse Pointe Shores Improvement Foundation was the first foundation for the Grosse Pointes. I think it's like 35 years ago. I mean, thanks to the leaders at the time. Kurt Tech was one, Bill Dowling was another, there were a few other people. They were the visionaries that set in motion the creation of a 501c3 organization, and they were successful over the years. I mean, even right now, they're holding about $1.3 million in their endowment fund. It's so significant that our auditors, I'm looking at the last financial statements for our audited financial statements, it says right there in the opinion, the Grosse Pointe Shores Improvement Foundation financial activities are included in the city's basic financial statement as the discretely presented component unit. And then, in the footnote A, note A says the Grosse Pointe Shores Improvement Foundation is a Michigan nonprofit corporation described in Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code and is exempt from federal and state income taxes. The foundation was organized to provide financial assistance to the city. The city is the primary recipient of the foundation activities, receiving 100% of the foundation's economic resources. Additionally, the foundation seeks the city's input to determine projects to complete. Finally, the foundation's endowment is material to the city's financial statements. That's why it's included as part of our audited financial statements. But I thank all the leaders of the Improvement Foundation, most recently now Brett, serving back-to-back terms as president of the Improvement Foundation, because it's been really invaluable in terms of providing some needed projects that the city sometimes is a little bit short on financial resources. So good job, Brett, and then all the people, Matt, all the leaders of Tina. I see Tina here of the Improvement Foundation. So thank you. Next item is legal report. Brian? I don't think much has been going on with legal, has it?
Close my heels this month. Since the date of the last city council meeting held on May 15th, 2018, city attorney has been engaged in the following activities on behalf of the city. Under general municipal matters, we received a number, seems like a flurry this month, of Freedom of Information Act requests from various parties. One that keeps coming back like a fruit fly is an outfit called Smart Procure. And they wanted city purchasing records, and we prepared a response to them and said we don't really maintain the purchasing records in the format that you want us to maintain them in. They sent us a program, said, sort of create a new report for us. We're not required to do that. So then they filed an appeal, and then we got back in touch with them, and and we prepared a response to the appeal. We were going to present it here to the council tonight, but we got back in touch with the requester, who ultimately agreed to withdraw the appeal and withdraw the request altogether. There was another one sent by an outfit, it's a subrogation outfit called, I forget, but they subrogate to insurance claims, and it has to do with the flooding that occurred on Shorecrest of a home, and insurance company had paid the claim and then subrogated over to this subrogation collection outfit. They sent it, unfortunately, to the city of Grosse Pointe, naming the wrong address and the wrong everything. We got in touch with them, asked them to resubmit it. They did resubmit it. We are going to provide them with some materials. The one thing that they asked for was all records regarding the sewer system, which dates back to 1950. And I don't think that's really what they need, but we're in the process of negotiating that with them. Excuse me, we attended a Rocket Fiber meeting at the Grosse Pointe School District offices with the city manager, and then subsequent to that meeting, we received and reviewed the Rocket Fiber costs proposal. And we also conferred with the city regarding insurance rebate matters. Moving along to the Points Area Assisted Transportation Service and SOC contract with SMART, or between the parties and SMART bus system. We finally were able to touch base with Avery Gordon. He's the general counsel at SMART, and a number of people that are in his office. And you know, what originally was hoped to occur back before SOC, our subcontractors, the PATH subcontractor, before SOC changed executive director and a number of management changes, SOC wanted to take all the money that the cities that are part of the PATS bus system were receive those monies directly, spend them as they will, and erstwhile report back to the members of PATS, the member communities, as to the conduct and operations of the bus system and the expenditure of the monies. SMART wouldn't have anything to do with that. They wanted continued city municipal involvement on the PATS board. The PATS board people wanted lighter administrative requirements on one hand, and SOC wanted all the money on the other. We talked to again the general counsel's office about it. Ultimately, what was agreed upon, and I think this is the right conclusion, is that PATS is only going to have to meet twice a year instead of quarterly. SMART wants SOC to maintain all the insurances and other contract requirements that are in the SMART contract with the transportation system at large. I did note it's on the agenda under city manager's presentation tonight. I did note that we have a draft contract service agreement that's recommended for signature. One thing that does need to be changed in it, we can either do it with a pen notation or insert the page later on, is to go from quarterly meetings to semi-annual meetings. June 30th and December 31st, I guess. Will work as well as anything. On the sale of 57 Michaud Court, that's the vacant lot that the city owns, we had a conference call with the buyer and the title company. That was right after our city council meeting last month. They were very, very hot to trot, and we're also happy that this is going forward. This was after our closed session. We decided to move forward. And we were to receive the closing documents. We had some, but a settlement statement and a title commitment in particular, and they had anticipated this being approved at tonight's meeting, or the sale being approved at tonight's meeting, and then closing in escrow within 2 days of tonight. And I didn't receive until yesterday the closing documents, including the 2 settlement statements, but we still don't have the title commitment from them. So we'll have to put this over to next month. I'll be in touch with the title company and the buyer again about it. I think they're serious about closing, but we don't have what we need, and therefore I can't make a recommendation to you as to whether or not to approve the sale.
Is there a local title company, Brian?
It's called Vanguard.
I've heard of them.
I think they're maybe Sterling Heights.
I've heard of them. Yeah, okay.
Home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. On the see, shall I jump ahead or backwards? On the Deeplands Drive matter, on the Wayne County Circuit Court appeal, you probably already know because I've sent all of you a copy of the court's opinion and order. The Wayne County Circuit Court Judge Craig Strong on June 13th, just last week, issued an opinion and order affirming the city's, on all points raised, affirming the city's denial of the zoning board's denial of the preliminary plat application. Point by point for the reasons stated in brief, frankly, and indicating that the city had acted in all respects, you know, in accordance with its charter on the one hand, its zoning ordinances. The city had not acted unconstitutionally or without giving due process of law. Really a categorical, in my opinion, well-written opinion that really covered all the points really quite well. We're not sure where things will go after this in terms of what the developer might want to do.
Does he have an appeal right at this point? Can he go to the Court of Appeals? He has 28 days to do that?
It's 21 or 28 groups.
21 days. Would he have to file an appeal? I mean, a bond?
Only if he wants a stay of enforcement, but
there's no enforcement.
No, there's no enforcement. So there's really, you know, my crystal ball tells me no.
On an opinion like that, good luck.
I didn't realize we were on the shores of the Detroit River, you know, after reading the opinion.
Fluid geography.
Yeah.
And you're also the village of St. Clair Shores.
Yeah.
At one point of the decision, but apart from those minor, you know, typographical or whatever definitional sorts of things, this is really a good thing. You know, very favorable to the city. On the Southeast Macomb Sanitary District matter, we had extensive negotiations with the council for the Southeast Macomb Sanitary District over this memorandum of understanding. As Jesse Vandekreek pointed out earlier tonight, you know, that's the main thing in front of the council for review and signature, and we endorse it also, obviously. We've gotten through all the issues on it. If you remember last month, we presented you with the system contract, which was, you know, frankly boilerplate as between the SEMSD and the half dozen communities that would be party to it. We said that we would agree to the form of the contract, even though we didn't like, you know, a number of its provisions, but provided that the memorandum of understanding was agreed upon and entered into. And the big pluses of that, as Bruce pointed out, were that there's no look back for past exceedances, at least by the SEMSD, by the authority. It doesn't prevent look back by another member community, but you know, that's a separate issue, and you know, it wasn't negotiated with them to that end. There was a 10% premium charge that at the last minute they wanted to add in, which I mentioned earlier tonight, which would have cost the city approximately $80,000 a month, or I'm sorry, a year. Beginning after the termination, the 5-year termination date of the MOU. At the last minute, we just said, if you don't remove that, you're not going to have this MOU. They had their hair in a knot about, you know, it was our contract with the authority, and we just held fast and said, you know, you got to pull it out of it.
Isn't it nice to have a little leverage now and then?
Yeah, good work with that. I mean, from a proposed penalty of $500,000 to a new penalty of $100,000, really.
You got to transfer debt,
That's-
Yeah.
and you got to transfer the bonds.
Yeah.
The hearts and minds follow. Yeah, that's all. This is the only chance, to think of this, we will ever have this opportunity to have any leverage with these guys. Remember the water contract, 30 years, take it or leave it?
Adhesion contract.
Yeah. This is the same thing here, only one time ever, so.
Yeah, and there were a few other provisions that we got them to pull out having to do with lookbacks again. Reinserting or reinstating a 5-year automatic, or not automatic, but a 5-year renewability clause, which favors the city. So, you know, all around, and we finally got to this yesterday. All around, it was a good negotiation.
Good work, Brian, yeah.
And yeah, I guess, you know, that's really about it. We're continuing to shadow review the border property border dispute between the owners of 866 and 870 Lakeshore Road. But that's then again assigned to Insurance Council, and all we're doing is making sure that the i's and t's are dotted and crossed.
Okay, good.
That's my report.
Good report. Any questions of Brian?
I got a couple. What's going on with the private action on Deeplands with the, the deed restrictions? Do you know, because you're shadowing that as well, I assume.
Just in a nutshell, back in April now or early May, Judge Sheila Gibson, who's the Wayne County judge in that case, issued her opinion dismissing the complaint that was filed in the case. Subsequently, the neighbors group filed a motion for reconsideration by Judge Gibson, alleging that there was some palpable error of law in the way that she ruled. May or may not have been the case, but in any event, Judge Gibson denied the motion for reconsideration. So the neighbors group then appealed to the Michigan Court of Appeals without an enforcement bond, or stay of enforcement bond, I should say. They filed a claim of appeal some weeks ago. There's a briefing schedule, should the parties decide to pursue it, that they have to comply with. And, really that's all I know. I don't think anything more has occurred. I'm on the docket sheet for that matter on the one hand, so we're getting notifications, and on the other, I've had some conversation with the attorney for their group, but it's been more along the lines of him calling me and asking me, have you gotten your opinion yet? So we've shared that with them.
Now, does the Court of Appeals have to take this case? Or do they have the discretion? Or they can just...
This is an appeal of right, as of right.
So they're going to have to hear it at one point or another.
Do we know who's on the panel? Okay.
No, not yet.
Now, in our case, do they have appeal of right to the Court of Appeals as well? On the zoning appeal?
Yes.
So they could do that as well? Okay. It never ends.
Any other questions for Brian? Not good report, Brian. Mark, before you report, I see Dr. Siegel came. I'd like to go back to the harbor. Anything to add, Dr. Siegel? Would you like to come forward? Brian covered it with Matt, but I don't know if you have any other points.
No, I don't. I saw his notes and
Okay, good. It was pretty comprehensive. Okay, thanks. Thanks, John. Mark?
Yeah, well, I want to introduce, I was invited to participate, actually I had to do it twice, with the Parks Committee the other day, and Joe could not be here this evening. I hope that he was going to be able to make a presentation. But I want to introduce, I've got two introductions. You met Brian early, but Brian's going to bring you up to date on some of the things he's doing for us this summer as an intern, besides chasing down boat owners, etc. And it's funny that he's sitting next to Dr. Siegel because that's his dentist and he's got to go tomorrow. So he wanted to make sure he got his work done on that issue. Or it could be a sore mouth, maybe. Only teeth. James McNellis is with Stuckey Vitale Architects, and we are not required to have a Parks and Rec master plan, but we've had a series of them over the years. Something that the Parks Committee talked about. We had engaged Stuckey Vitale Architects at a very reasonable sum to summarize all of the projects we had in the past and to put together a combined document. James went to Grosse Pointe North. He's from this area. He studied at Cranbrook. He's a graduate of Yale University, and is working on an internship with Stuckey Vitale and assisted John in summarizing this, some of the projects that have taken place over the years, and we'll be commenting on projects that we have completed from previous master plans or ones that we're not doing for a very specific reason, etc. So if you want to take a moment to talk about the project and stuff like that.
Be happy to. If I could just get a moment to set up.
Sure. As I said, this is something, we've had, this all goes back to really project working with the Improvement Foundation when we talked about, and staff had recommended, a second a pavilion because we have people standing in line on April 1st to see who gets the right time and the best dates for their summer party and stuff. And so we had talked, there was Tina headed the Blue Ribbon Committee, Albert Kahn was involved initially with costs, and it all had to do with projects in the park for the most part, as well as the sled hill and some of the improvements of the baseball field and ones that have been brought to our attention, and small projects that the Improvement Foundation themselves have undertaken. And if you haven't been by the pool yet, the whole new area in the front is such an improvement that Brett Marshall, working with Brett and our staff and a whole bunch of other things that they got done that are really of value to the community and add enhancements to our park. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for having me. My name is James McNeilis. I'm from Stuckey Vitale Architects. Originally, I'm from Grosse Pointe. I'm from the woods, actually. I'm currently representing John Vitale, and we're submitting for your review, for public review, the master plan for the Grosse Pointe Shores Park and Municipal Area for 2018. So what you're seeing right now is an overall aerial. I'm going to switch them around so you can see our line work for this job. And I wanted the public to have a chance to also see the other board too. So we'll switch them around.
Good, okay.
But this is a work in progress. That's what we want you to know. So we will make ourselves available to the planning committee so we can answer any questions they may have in the future. But really, I wanted to show up today to answer any questions the public may have and submit this for review. So we were engaged at the beginning of early 2018 to work on this project, and what it really is a combination of consolidation of all the previous master plans. So it includes all the projects that have been under consideration in previous iterations of this document. So what we want to show are any future enhancements to the park and municipal grounds. So currently under consideration are a new pavilion. Actually, let's switch it around for get a better look.
Yeah.
I started to say while you're setting up that normally to get grant money from the state or typically from the federal government, you have to have a Parks and Rec master plan. It has to be updated every 5 years. But since our parkland is residents only, like all of the Grosse Pointe and number of communities, it's really not a requirement for us to do. But it is a planning document. It's a value. I think we'll be sharing this information both with the Parks Committee, the Harbor Committee, Planning Commission, etc.
Mark, if I could comment too. Originally, when we went to the extent of creating a master plan for the city, at that point in time, the state of Michigan basically was offering municipalities with public parks grant money. And basically, the only way that you could receive grant money is by putting together a master plan with a wish list of items that you're trying to build and receive assistance on. So we had Albert Kahn put together a very comprehensive plan and applied for the grants along with other Grosse Pointe cities. And we actually were involved in litigation that went up to the level of the Supreme Court in the state of Michigan. And it was ruled that because Grosse Pointe is unique in that we have public parks, but they're only public for our residents. They're not public for all of the residents of the state of Michigan, that we were disqualified from receiving any grant money. And the original thought is that once you put in place a master plan, that legally you could not change that plan once you received grant money. So in other words, if you said, hey, we want to put in a $1 million pool, and they gave you $1 million for the pool, and then you changed the plan and said, we're not building the pool now, we're keeping the money, that could be problematic. But because we never qualified for grant money to begin with, we weren't obligated to continue to update the plan. But we have done it from time to time. 2009 was the last time we did it. And we felt that because there's so much activity going on in the park, and there's been other activity that's gone on since 2009, the splash pad, the pavilion, the kids' playground area, and now the new entrance and gatehouse, we thought it was probably a wise idea to bring things up to speed. And then ultimately, after the presentation tonight, once we get everything fine-tuned, it's our intention to have a public hearing, allow the residents to come in and brainstorm with us and come up with ideas on how we can improve the park, maybe different concepts of what we could add to our master plan, and obviously do that in tandem with the Planning Commission, and then ultimately have council approve it so that we can say, hey, look, in 18, we went through the pain of really updating this thing, and I think for long-range planning, it's a great tool and instrument for the city to have. With that said, I'll let you continue.
Thank you, Council Member. So, like it was said, this document is subject to revision, but shown on the plan are a few projects, including a new pavilion at the north end of the park, kind of much like the existing pavilion that you have now where you can rent it out, more or less of the same scale. So a splash guard along the seawall to preserve the existing landscape. I know it was mentioned in the infrastructure portion of the evening that some of that landscape has been washed out into the lake. We'd like to be able to prevent that. A community center on the eastern end. A proposed new cap on the existing seawall by the marina, now as discussed. So in addition, we're proposing a new gatehouse at the entryway to service traffic off Lakeshore Road, as well as a new pickleball court on the south side of the property. So
Point to those changes when you talk about like the community room.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Thank you. So the community center would be a year-round building?
So the proposed location of the pavilion would be up here by the tennis courts. Here's the existing pool house. The proposed community center would be here, but that's still a location that can be revised. That plan and design can still be developed. We're thinking about proposing a new pickleball court next to the existing pickleball court. This would be the new gatehouse with the entrance coming off of Lakeshore Drive here. So for the benefit of people, the pavilion would be in this area. The community center is this area. The pickleball court is down to south end here. The new gatehouse is supposed to be in this general area coming off of Lakeshore Drive. And then the one I haven't gotten to yet would be the future proposed ice dams next to the existing baseball diamonds. So just right outside here, which would be just really cute. I apologize. It's a really good. So, so we're also showing new pedestrian walkways with access to the park along with safety striping to cross over Lakeshore. A new pedestrian gate and control arm for incoming vehicles coming off of Lakeshore. So that would be all part of the gatehouse. It would be a one-way vehicular egress route for cars exiting the parking lot. We'd be maintaining this existing guardhouse. So the one that everyone's familiar with already, the one just over here as shown in the pool area, that would stay in place. But this second gatehouse by Lakeshore Drive would be an added security measure. It would be sort of one more checkpoint for people who want to get into the park.
Can you also speak to the public safety issues that we're addressing with the arm and then the special marking on the ground? And
yeah, I'd be happy to.
Go ahead.
So this would be one control arm that would come down and stop people before they would be able to get into the park and deal with it. Like, we would be able to allow one person to enter at a time, one vehicle to enter at a time. And for foot traffic, it's going to be extra striping. So
this is an existing sidewalk where you cross into the park already. You add additional striping across Lakeshore and then across this new driveway so that you have an opportunity, or I guess you have that extra step, that extra level of pavers kids crossing here. We want to let people know and make sure they're aware so that it does become a safe environment. And then this walkway would drop down and connect up with, I think it's an existing sidewalk that goes along the side of the parking lot. And we're talking about this existing walkway here would be a new striping, and then there would be a new driveway coming off of Lakeshore Drive where there would be striping here, and that would connect up with this existing walkway. So it would maintain all the same safety features that you expect out of a public crosswalk. And we touched on the ice pad. So if there are any questions or comments about the master plan,
A lot of good ideas, Jim. I know some of this is like a wish list, and there's been talk. We've been soliciting, I think, public comment, but we really haven't had public hearings. I think we're going to have a lot to digest this year. Certainly, a lot of upheaval at the park in terms of disruption and parking in the tennis courts and the new roadway. So what I'm going to propose is that during the time of public hearings and that we have a moratorium with respect to any additional park improvements so that we can make sure we get it right. And it serves the future of Grosse Pointe Shore as well. So I think that, you hear all these ideas, but I want to actually have some town halls. I want to have some hearings where we really dedicate just to future park improvements. And during this time, make sure that, let's take a little bit of a pause and digest what we have, digest what we've done. We're doing some wonderful things now. And this maps out the future, potential future for the city park. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, the second thing I wanted to introduce, I mentioned Brian has been working with Tom and Dr. Segal and the Harbor Committee. He's also been involved in several projects. He's prepared for us, and I'll let him talk briefly about it. The Storm Ready program that he came across, that we're going to be one of the few original city applicants for this. A lot of the state parks have this now. He's got cooperation from the Yacht Club in doing this. He's outlined some of the requirements to do it, and it's a really good project. But, it's good to have someone young and enthusiastic like this to do that.
To discuss, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Go ahead.
First, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, for allowing me to speak. To discuss everything I've been working on, I have to take the filing cabinet out of my backpack up here. But I want to keep this short and brief. In addition to the handful of meetings Mark has allowed me to join and shadow him, ranging from DAAA and Citizens for Older Services for Older Citizens to engineering meetings with Wayne County officials and Grosse Pointe Farms regarding the seawall. I've been working on this side project because Mark asked me to think of something specific and well-oriented with Grosse Pointe Shores to work on over the summer as a side project. This side project is called Storm Ready. It's through the National Weather Service, and it's supported by NOAA. It is not a grant program, so it will not affect any upcoming grants for the shoreline. Storm Ready is a nationwide preparedness program to help communities and facilities develop plans and equip themselves to handle severe weather hazards unique to the applying community's location. Mark and I had a conference call with Richard Pullman, the warning coordinator at the National Weather Service for Southeast Michigan. According to him, since Grosse Pointe Shores is already equipped to serve a population well above our current population, the certification process is just a matter of filling out the application, fact-checking, and also coordinating this application with the Department of Public Safety. The program offered by the NWS, supported by NOAA, is a nationwide grassroots program that certifies communities and private facilities for maintaining equipment and methods to ensure the safety of all its residents in the event of hazardous weather. The benefits of this program to Grosse Pointe Shores is multifactorial. Above all, it helps keep people safe in the event of hazardous weather. It is image incentive. Upon certification, the village's community rating can increase in FEMA's community rating system. After the village certifies as a storm-ready community, we will receive information about possible adjustments to the national flood insurance premiums residents pay. A storm-ready certification will help federal, state, and nonprofits to justify funding towards critical equipment used to disseminate hazardous weather warnings. For example, if anything were to happen to the storm siren, if it needs costly maintenance or replacement, organizations that exclusively fund storm-ready communities can be used to offset some of these costs. And the same goes for the rain gauges and any other systems in place to alert the community of natural hazards. Above all, this ensures our residents and park members that our city is being proactive with weather safety, and we already are. It's just a matter of being certified. Sorry, this is my first time publicly.
No, that's all right. You're doing a great job, Brian. You're doing a great job.
And he'll be happy to answer any questions about this, but
Absolutely.
we're going to make the application. We'll be one of the earliest cities that have applied for this. There are a lot of state parks in some particular building. And in his other paid position as an attendant at the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club, he assures me that he'll be on the weed harvester early, and he also is able to secure their cooperation and allow them to be, again, a partner with us in this grant application.
Right. And I've heard many complaints that the weed harvester is only used exclusively for the yacht club, mainly. Not a lot of attention is being used in Grosse Pointe Shores wells. So Thursday mornings and Friday mornings, I've been trained to work on that harvester, and I will be servicing the wells in Grosse Pointe Shores.
Good. Thank you, Brian. Your background's environmental science, isn't it? Or?
Yes, environmental economics and management.
Okay. Because every time I see these 100-year rains, and it seems like we get a lot of these 100-year rains that we're not supposed to get. I think of what's going on in the environment.
Yeah, with the air temperatures becoming higher and higher, it can hold a lot more moisture. So when it does rain, it rains more, and that's no longer a fluke. That's becoming a trend.
Well, Brian, thanks for paying attention to the harbor, because the residents, particularly the corners seem to get a lot of the bad stuff. And so,
absolutely,
remember, we're the complaint department too, so we get those complaints. Thanks, Brian. Great job.
Just have a few more items. Brian attended with me the Detroit Area Agency on Aging annual meeting. I happen to be, and have been for, 10, 12 years now, one of the two representatives from the Grosse Pointe on the Exel board. I serve as their board treasurer, chair of the HR committee, and of course we're going through a process to replace our 38-year, since the history of the organization, president and chief executive officer who's retiring. So I'll be happy to, I'll forward to council their annual report. Pleased that a couple years ago, council honored one of our local residents, Sheen Kagero, for his work on saving the art at the Detroit Institute of Arts. And since that time, Lynn and our staff has been patiently pestering them to allow us to participate in the DIA's Inside Out program. And we just had a meeting with them. Brian, I think, participated in part of it as well. We're going to be featuring 5 pictures on their program this year, later in July, probably 3 of them here at City Hall, a couple maybe down at the Ford House, because they participate in the past as well. We're still working that out. And we're looking for permanent ability to annually, on Gene's behalf, to thank him as a wonderful resident of our community. Council, again, recognized it a few years ago, in his honor, to be a permanent participant in their Inside Out program. In addition, we did get the good news, but I couldn't figure out how to send it from my iPad to all on council, that our historic plaque for this building, being an Albert Kahn design building, you saw the write-up, a couple minor changes. They approved it, and it's now on order, and will be paid for out of next year's budget. It takes 6 or 8 weeks to build. Strangely enough, it's made in Ohio. I don't know why we can't find somebody in Michigan, but that's separate. Then one of the things Rhonda didn't want to mention, but thanks to her work and really the staff, we belong to the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority. It's the pool for a number of cities. I think there's 268 members in it. We're in the small pool, and our rebate this year, because the pool did so much better in overall claims and claim handling, is $111,603. That, and our overall $144,000 and change is our total insurance bill for the city. So when you minus the rebate, we did pretty good again. And our actual total bill, and again, this is a lot of work that Rhonda did to provide updated information to them. The staff provides that to her. Lynn coordinates it, and the only thing left outstanding is the crazy underground storage tank, which will be handling, I mean, Rhonda and Lynn already got that going to get that information to them. But our total bill is $3,400 less than last year. We reviewed increasing our coverage for underground storage, for basement flooding, but we decided to keep it. It was more cost effective for us to keep it the same. We have a $100,000 per occurrence policy with a $5,000 deductible. We are going to exceed that on the Lake Crest flooding that occurred based on the power being the tree knocking out the power and the generator not coming on, but that we're booking those. And the kind of coverage that we have with MMRMA provides that they'll be handling all of our claims. So they discount things, they decide what we should pay, what they recommend that we pay, etc. But again, it's good work that, and we haven't had claims in a long time there. Brian had mentioned earlier, we have the court case between the two, because we gave a permit to close a driveway that was on really somebody else, a small portion was on someone else's property. So we're continuing to monitor that. Brian and a couple of the staff went yesterday with me to the annual ASPA, American Society of Public Administration Awards Program, and Yulia Harris, who was our intern last year, grew up here in the city, worked at the pool, and her brother, I think, still is on the swim team, was given a special award along with another young lady who both are receiving their MPA from Wayne State and work in local government. And Yulia got a permanent job in the city of Novi. So she moved out, sold her house, I think, in 2 days in St. Clair Shores in the South End, and is moving closer to her job in Novi, where she'll be a staff person in the police department doing special programs for police and the fire department of Novi, and working with a young person, also still young, who was one of my interns in St. Clair Shores, who was their assistant city manager. I think it was mentioned earlier, we're pretty much on target for the completion of the tennis courts. We'll be starting the layout of the road very shortly. The cleanup, you saw the trucks out at the Lakeshore Interceptor, and we spent, this was originally budgeted in our water sewer department for about 60,000. It's going to be more than that, as Eddie and Jesse mentioned earlier. Every time we grouted one joint, we blew another one further up, but we now finally, the work is completed. I don't have the final bill yet. Should have shortly. We received, in conjunction, I know we talked about this before, we applied to NOAA for a grant to soften our and do special repairs to the seawall. We had submitted several weeks ago through the normal process a request for Wayne County to do some work. We're still waiting for it, for an answer from them as to when they come out and do something, but that's still in process, and both Shane and I have followed up on that. But we received preliminary news that of 10 grants submitted by the Office of the Great Lakes for the in Lansing to NOAA, they asked for additional information on our project and 2 others. So that's at least positive news so far. And last thing is we will have a couple of, Brian has begun some process. We've been dealing with the engineers, with our planners over what's equivalent replacement of trees. And we've asked, talked to Mary, as chair of the Planning Commission. We'll be looking at some ordinances along that to try to determine, with a more, some communities have a better way of figuring, if you take down a 24-inch tree, you got to replace it with a certain percentage of 6-inch trees or 4-inch trees, etc. So we'll be taking a look at that as well. And that's finally it for the stuff I have tonight.
Are there any questions for Mark? Mark, regarding the basement flooding that we had in that street, do we know our out-of-pocket cost or exposure?
Yeah. Well,
because I heard
not on all of them.
It could be like 50 to 70,000 or
potential. We're booking it as the people from MMRMA and our behalf look at each of those claims. 3 have been settled or offered for settlement. There were only 5 total that had significant damage beyond the cleanup, and that's beyond. We're covering that in our water and sewer fund. So.
Okay.
And as we get more, we'll share a final total.
I know the generator had been inspected a week before the accident, but
just a few days before. And of course, it is in next year's budget to be replaced.
So Honeywell didn't pick it up as an item to be replaced.
No, it wasn't necessary at the time, but again, based on our capital improvement schedule, which again the council and the finance committee has developed over the last number of years, that's one that we can no longer get significant parts for, etc. So that's why it's approved in the budget. And Bob talked about from Brett I'm sure that will be on order sometime after July 1st, if not July 2nd.
Okay, good. Good report, Mark. Okay, new business 14, Detroit Area Agency on Aging.
Yeah, this issue comes before council every year for a 3-year implementation plan. We update the annual implementation plan. As I mentioned, all of the Grosse Points, Harper Woods, Hamtramck, and Highland Park, along with the city of Detroit, are in the Detroit Area Agency on Aging. So they hold public hearings. Again, I mentioned I am one of 2 representatives on their board, and we recommend approval of the plan and authorize us to submit back, and it goes to the state that we are supportive of their plan. Happy to answer any questions.
It doesn't cost us anything. It's just a requirement that.
Yes.
Okay.
I invite a motion then to approve the plan.
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, the PATS proposed service agreement.
Yeah, this was mentioned also, and I might mention Bob Barrett is currently the board chair of PATS, and has been instrumental in this, but this was like a widescreen spectacular, years in the making. Brian and our house have been, on behalf of not just our community, but all of them, has been bird dogging, if that's the right way to say it, smart, and finally got them to agree to the plans. The only, as he mentioned earlier, the only change to mention is they've agreed to, the board only has to meet 2 times as a requirement, or other times as necessary. but it puts us in compliance, and each of the communities, all of the Grosse Points and Harper Woods are participants in this. Some of us donate a portion of our block grant funds. In addition to, each of us receive municipal credits and community credits from SMART. And so, we would recommend approval.
What is our cost mark on this? What do we contribute to Pat's?
I'll have to get that for you. We get municipal and community credits from SMART because we're a participating community. We give them a few thousand of our block grant money.
Like 3,000 or something?
Yeah, and we supplement to SOC some additional funds because there's a waiting list, and the PATS program in itself provides for senior handicapped persons pickup, and they also provide with the schools 2 programs where they pick up special needs kids at the schools and take them to workshops and things like that.
Well, it said they gave 1,000 rides to eligible residents.
Almost 1,000 rides just to folks here in Grosse Pointe Shores.
Okay.
973, actually.
I think we're the largest user, aren't we?
Now, on a per capita basis, we
Yes, we
are.
are.
It's probably a few folks that took multiple rides.
That's okay.
It really works.
Yeah.
Well, years ago, I was a recipient of the PATS service when I had my surgeries. I invite a motion to approve the service agreement.
So moved.
Second, no,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I gotta give my say here.
Oh.
My name is on that document. We've been going back and forth for quite a few months. I don't mind only 2 meetings required, but I want the ability to have call for a different meeting, additional meetings if I see fit.
Oh, yeah, it's in the agreement.
It's in the agreement to do that, because I'm not so sold on SOC personally. You know, they do some things. I've had to do their tax returns for last 2 years myself. You know, so I'm not doing the next one. I'm going to sit down with them and we can go through how to do that.
So are you recommending a motion or no?
No, just if you say it's in the document, I don't read it in there.
Right now, the document says quarterly meetings or at other such times as Pat shall require. Okay, this is a subcontract arrangement with SOC, right?
Okay, right.
SMART has agreed that we can chop back on that.
Okay.
To semi-annually or biannually, whatever the right word is. However, SOC has to continue to comply on the one hand with all the SMART requirements and insurance and all that sort of other stuff. And on the other, all we're going to do is change it to biannually, and at such other times as PATS may require. So you will have that flexibility under the provision.
As long as I got the flexibility to do that.
Okay, so I'll second the motion.
Okay, any further discussion?
Are we going to pencil in quarterly, or are we going to go semi-annual in this document? You said that we needed it.
That's on page 3.
Paragraph 7.
Paragraph 7, page 3.
So
we got to do an edit job. So we're eliminating March 31st and September 30th, Brian?
Well, it says show financial on a quarterly basis.
Well, in the quarters, the afford.
Well, that's a financial report, Ted, not a meeting.
Well, it says on a quarterly basis.
Yes,
So
I
financially
account
account.
to PATS on a quarterly basis.
But that's what Bob was objecting to. He wants
No,
to.
he's talking about a meeting, not finance. You want a quarterly report.
Yeah.
They still can do the report. That doesn't change.
Right, but what Brian was talking about was the semi-annual.
Talking about the meetings.
Right.
Yes.
That was the issue.
Right.
Do you just want the flexibility to be able to call a meeting? Is that what you want?
I don't know.
2 meetings a year is fine, as long as I have the flexibility to call for a meeting.
Okay. What page is that? The.
I don't see it in here.
Yeah, I don't see it
Because this is
either.
not. I didn't write this.
Let me look at this a minute.
On page 6, I don't see it.
I got Councilmember Seaman seconding the motion. You made the motion?
I'll make the motion. It just whatever. I'm okay with it. I want to protect us.
We want the oversight. So.
Yeah, I'll find that. It came on a.
But I don't see it either. I think, Bob, you're right. I don't see it.
Make sure we put that in.
Okay. I'm good with
Yeah,
that.
if we can just amend the language so that he has the flexibility to call a meeting when he wants to.
Bruce, you have that in the motion? Okay, that there, we will make adjustments, if it's not in here, with the language regarding a meeting to be called. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. Rocket Fiber,
Sorry, Ted, can I clarify something?
yes.
It's the PATS bylaws that need to be amended with regard to the meetings. It's not this document. This is a meeting, this is a quarterly accounting by SOC to
Okay.
PATS.
That's what I said.
I understand that PATS was in the process of amending its bylaws. You and I spoke about it.
Right.
But you're not there yet. That's where the biannual meetings needs to be covered, and that's my mistake for.
Yeah, we meet in July. This meeting.
Okay,
I'll make that change.
so that's clear then, Bruce, for the record? Okay.
Cool.
So you don't have to amend this.
That's
simply.
Right.
So we want to revise the motion to say that.
Yeah, again, the motion is to approve the proposed service agreement on page 100 and 118. Matt, you made the motion, or Bob made the motion?
Yes.
Matt, you seconded?
Yes.
We
We're good.
voted on it? It was unanimous. Okay. I think that's clear. So, Rocket Fiber?
Yes, we have Mark Hudson and Lucas Ottinger here to do, they made a presentation along with Gary Niehaus from the schools to the Finance Committee a few weeks ago. This is something that's come before each of the communities.
Thanks for being patient and
Yes.
waiting diligently there in the back.
Well,
Okay,
thank you.
you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Thank you, Council
Yeah, I
Mayor.
was going to say this. Let's forget.
Thank you, Mark, for all your guidance and partnership over the last 2 years. My name is Mark Hudson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Rocket Fiber. To give you a quick background on us, we are part of the Quicken Loans family of companies. We are headquartered in downtown Detroit. And we started our company about 4 years ago with the mission of making downtown Detroit the most connected urban core in America. Fast forward to today, we've largely accomplished that mission. Recode Magazine named us the third fastest internet network in the entire world in 2017. The other thing you should know about us is that we are hyper-focused on our client service. We are absolutely maniacal about the way that we take care of our clients. So speed and service are really our two hallmarks, and really why we're at the table to talk to you guys today. So to take you back about 2 years ago, when we were still very much underway in our downtown Detroit deployment, Gary Niehaus, the superintendent of the Grosse Pointe School District, reached out to me and came down to our office in downtown Detroit and pitched us on a really unique idea. And that idea was to form a public-private partnership to build a high-speed fiber optic internet ring in the Grosse Pointe municipalities, along with the city of Harper Woods. And that fiber ring would essentially connect all of the anchor institutions within the Grosse Pointe municipalities and Harper Woods. So the schools, the municipal buildings, and other key anchors like the War Memorial, as an example. 2 years later, here we are with a plan that we wanted to present to you guys tonight. So that's the background on the story. You should also know that the school district, which has been essentially leading the consortium of partners, launched a competitive RFP process over a year ago, of which Rocket Fiber was the winner of that competitive bidding process. We were the lowest bid. Not only were we the lowest bid, but we offered to contribute in-kind engineering and design services for over a total of $400,000, roughly $400,000 of in-kind services, along with a high-speed 10 gigabit internet connection backbone to be shared among the consortium members, as well as a 15-year maintenance period where Rocket Fiber will be performing all of the basic maintenance on the ring. That's the nuts and bolts of the deal. What it does for Rocket Fiber is actually part of the construction process. We will be building additional capacity that will allow us to serve the Grosse Pointe municipalities as well as the city of Harper Woods in the future. So phase one is to get the anchors online. Phase two is for Rocket Fiber to launch our commercial and residential service within the footprint. And so with that, I have provided the council with a copy of a presentation. We can kind of skip over some of the boilerplate material. I know we're standing between most of you and going home to see your family, so wanted to kind of go over most of the boilerplate and kind of skip right to the deal mechanics portion of the presentation. Stopping on a slide here titled Ring Map. I know it's a little hard to see, but this is an illustration of the essentially the fiber ring. So we designed and engineered this to optimize passing as closely as we can to all the anchor institutions of the consortium members to essentially reduce the cost of extending this ring to what we call a lateral connection to those buildings. So the orange is essentially the ring, and then you'll see some of the green and blue. Those are the lateral connections, green being aerial, meaning we're building on utility poles, blue meaning there are no utility poles. The utility poles that are already there are fully loaded at capacity, so we'd be performing underground construction in those cases. The vast majority of the ring will be an aerial build that is for a number of factors. One, it allows speed to market, so one of the challenges is trying to time the deployment to bring the Grosse Pointe School District online for the 2019-2020 school year. So assuming that we break ground on the project here in short order, sometime over the summer, the goal would be to bring this network online, fully operational, by the end of next summer. If you turn the page, moving into some of the high-level economics, the all-in project cost is just over $2.2 million. That is made up of two primary components, $900,000 for the ring, which is shared among all consortium members, and then the laterals, which are subdivided specifically pro rata by each municipalities or each partner's needs. I forgot to mention, we have also an additional member, a consortium member that looks like they will be joining, or all indications will be joining, and that's the library system as well. Forgot to mention that. So the laterals then, again, are allocated by partner. Some partners, like the school district, have as many as 16 laterals to as few as 1 or 2, depending on the partner. On the next page, you'll see the all-in view of the $2.2 million, along with 2 optional builds. One is to Macomb County Community College. That's option 1. And the second option is option 2, Wayne State University. If both those options are included, that'll bring the project cost to just under $3 million. The reason that the consortium is considering building those optional laterals is those are 2 major peering points, or areas on the internet that the consortium can buy low-cost educational bandwidth. So it allows the consortium to control their costs in the future should the 10 gigabit connection that Rocket Fiber is providing ever be exceeded, or if the consortium chose to purchase redundancy options, which we recommend, meaning purchasing a second connection from another provider or a physically diverse route into the ring. And what that does is that protects you if there is an outage, there's a physical damage that happens to the network that allows you to have multiple redundant connectivity options.
That's an add-on cost then, right? That would be an add-on?
That would be an add-on operational cost. So you're looking at the option 1 and option 2 are capital costs that will lower over the lifetime of the ring the operational cost for that add-on. Turning the page, we have provided a partner overview. So full transparency, wanted to give every partner a full view into the lateral costs for each partner based on those requests. So you can see everyone shares the same base ring cost, assuming that all the partners are in, of $113,000, and then the pro rata allocation for the Wayne State and Macomb County options are in there as well. So in the case of in the case of the shores, the laterals would total just over $55,000, and that's for 2 laterals. One is to this building, and the other is to Lakefront Park. So the next page is just a specific view for Grosse Pointe Shores. So the fiber ring cost, again, pro rata $113. The lateral cost of $55 with the 2 options brings the total cost to $265,000.
Now, Mark, the agreement says $465,000. Is that a mistake?
Yes.
on page 10.
That was with the original ladders, and Bob pointed that out to me too, that we didn't have the latest copy of the agreement, the intergovernmental agreement.
Okay, okay.
Yep. So that will be updated in a future draft of the intergovernmental agreement. So on the next page, what we have attempted to do for each partner is kind of outline an ROI model. If we're looking at just direct costs to the municipality, what would that look like? So again, we're providing the 10 gig connection to be shared among the consortium. That would enable at least gigabit service to this facility as well as Lakefront Park. Just to give you an idea of what that means, I know we said earlier in the meeting this building has high-speed fiber optic internet. That's true. But what we'd be bringing to this facility and to the park is a connection that is 10 times faster than the new upgrade to this building. What we call future-proofing the facility for a long time to come, as well as the Lakefront Park. So looking at the current spend at Lakefront Park in this building is essentially what this breakout is here. So right now, the spend with the current provider is $941 a month, which totals over $11,000 annually.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
$941 a month is the current spend in this building for internet connectivity, as well as with Lakefront Park. So the annual on that is just over $11,000.
Excuse me. What's your time?
Excuse me. Go ahead.
What's your timeline for residential use? I mean, that's what our residents are going to be concerned about is when can they get this?
Well, it's safe to say that it would be at least 6 months to a year after the core ring build. When we're talking about permitting, engineering, design, and deployment, the residential build is substantially more involved because we're literally going down every street, every block. So it would be, unfortunately, a long lead time. That's just kind of the nuts and bolts of deploying fiber infrastructure, but something that we've done in Detroit and something that we're very good at. Very excited to be able to bring to the community.
It probably makes more sense for businesses than residential, doesn't it?
Yeah, anything that's closer to the ring that could be a business is typically a higher margin client of ours. So we do both residential and business services. So typically our deployment model will look like building a base infrastructure like the ring, starting to connect to the high margin business clients and using that to subsidize the residential deployment.
So you've done streets in Detroit, residential streets?
That's correct.
Wayne State or what areas?
We deployed in 7 neighborhoods in Detroit. We've done downtown, midtown, New Center, Woodbridge, which is a highly single-family neighborhood. I would say most similar to the Grosse Pointe in terms of the infrastructure and the poles that we'd be building on. Corktown, Rivertown, pieces of Eastern Market, and pieces of Lafayette Park as well.
Are you guys doing your own installation?
All the outside plant, meaning all the hanging on poles, we subcontract out.
Okay.
We have an inside team that manages those contractors. The physical installation in homes is almost primarily 100% done by Rocket Fiber personnel, with the exception in the rare case that we have an overflow event where we have more demand than we can meet. We will then work with subcontractors.
So the outside subcontractor that installs this, what is their response time when we have an ice storm and the network goes down?
So there's going to be a service level agreement built in to the intergovernmental agreement, or excuse me, our agreement with the consortium. Off the top of my head, I believe it's going to be a 4-hour response time.
Okay. Would you be transparent about who the installation crews will be and who you contract with?
Absolutely. We're not done going through that selection process. We have a couple of, I'd say, go-to vendors that we worked with in Detroit. But we will be going through a competitive bidding process with our subcontractors to select them. And that will...
And will the same company that you're subcontracting for the installation also be there for storm repair and wind repair and any other kind of repair?
I can't say for certain it'll be the same company, but whatever company that is going to be a highly responsive, highly professional fiber crew. Because that will be our network on the line as well.
So you'll be transparent about who receives that contract as well?
Absolutely. It'll be
okay.
Mark, why are our costs $25,000 greater in Grosse Pointe Park when the park's more than twice our size in terms of their general fund budget?
Is that just due to the number of...
The park's at $240,000, we're at $265,000. So we're $25,000 more. Their general fund budget, I think 16 million, we're 6 million.
If I can address that point, they chose to just have one lateral, the main municipality building. They didn't choose to have any of the pump stations or parks.
Or the park.
So, as you can see in the draft, everybody has the same split for the ring, Wayne State connection, and the home connection, but just how far the municipality building was from the ring justified that just over $31,000.
Will this service also include telephone?
We do provide business telephone services today, residential telephone services on our roadmap. We do not offer it today. Can't 100% guarantee that we will offer it in the
So this proposal is basically just for internet?
Correct.
Okay.
If you're already in Detroit, why aren't you servicing Wayne State now?
Wayne State is part of the Michigan Merit Network, which is a large nonprofit network that services all of the public research institutions in the state of Michigan. So they are the primary internet provider for all the public universities in the state of Michigan. That being said, we actually do work with Wayne State and are working with them right now on servicing many of the retail clients that are co-located within their buildings. So Wayne State, I would say, is definitely a partner of ours and somebody that we're going to work with.
Because the extra cost from Wayne State and Macomb is about $97,000, so that's more than 1/3 of the total cost. Will the consortium be a separate audited entity, separate from the school system, or will it be a component of the school system?
My understanding, it's a separate, independently managed group that will have a board. So what the current framework looks like is all of the what we're kind of calling Tier 1 members, so the municipalities that decide to come into the partnership today would sit on that governance board.
Because one of the residents asked whether or not it would be an audited entity. Do you know or no?
I do not know the answer to that question. Sounds like
Again, it would be an audited entity, just like separate, just like we were talking about the SEMSD earlier. Those are all required under state law to have audits. This would have. The only thing the school district is doing here is serving as the fiscal agent, like sometimes people do for various grants and things like that. They would also, they would be just one board member of them, other than acting as a fiscal agent for this. And there's not anticipated, based on the meetings that we've been to, that they're hiring additional staff or anything like that. They would just pay the bills like we used to do for the Conference of Eastern Wayne and a couple of others that we've been or the consortium or healthcare for the growth points and stuff.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting your presentation.
Just a couple more quick points for you guys. In our ROI analysis that we attempted to perform, we tried to do a very conservative cut on what bandwidth utilization will look like in the future. So we cited a Cisco white paper that says bandwidth increases an average of 24% year over year. For the sake of our ROI analysis, we said we'll use a conservative 7% number. So accounting for the projected increase of bandwidth by the municipality, we then built out an ROI model that essentially says that there will be a 2% annual return on investment on the fiber ring and the infrastructure. And that's just the flat return without looking at some of the other intangibles. So if I could take a moment just to see if there's any questions on the ROI, and then I want to kind of speak to some of the intangibles, why this might make this project even more appealing.
I'm looking at the page, Mark. What is the payback period? Is it 20? It's over 20 years, isn't it? I mean, because I still see at the end of 20 years that there's still a net number. Annual depreciation.
The 20-year total, I believe, is if you're looking at the first row, is the total savings over the 20-year time frame.
Okay, utilization, okay. And the agreement contemplates a long-term lease. Do you know, it doesn't say how long that lease would be?
The typical industry standard is what we call a 20-year IRU, indefeasible rights of use, which is essentially a lease that has ironclad law and case law around it, meaning that if any of the partners or there was a bankruptcy or something, it would maintain ownership. The owner of the IRU maintains ownership through any event, sale, bankruptcy, transfer. It's yours unless you sign it away.
And if anybody departs during that time frame, then they forfeit essentially their rights to the other members of the consortium.
That is my understanding.
Okay.
So, if there's no further questions on the economic side, just speaking to some of the intangibles, we've included in the packet for the council what we're calling our excess fiber capacity revenue share model white paper. So this is a working draft, but what we've recognized through working with all the partners is there's many what we've kind of referred to as potential tier 2 nonprofit partners. So anchor institutions, for example, the Edsel and Eleanor Ford House, that may want to enter this partnership not as a direct tier 1 investor, but buying service as provided through excess capacity in the fiber ring at some point in the future. Again, this is just one partner that's just an example. It's totally fictitious at this point. But essentially, the extra fiber that we're putting in would be leased by the consortium to a tier 2 partner, to a nonprofit partner that the consortium would essentially monetize. So it allows that tier 2 partner to, over time, recoup operating expenses, driving down their internet bill, getting a faster service, while also allowing the consortium members to generate a little bit of residual revenue that helps drive the investment. So we talked to probably 3 or 4 partners already, some that are evaluating potentially coming in as a tier 1. The War Memorial is an example. But if they're not a tier 1 partner, certainly would be able to be added as a tier 2 partner down the road. Further intangible benefits, I believe there's some information, some light reading in there as well. What we know about fiber optic internet networks like Rocket Fiber in the United States, there's about 5 years of research out there now, Google Fiber being one of the first examples of this type of deployment in Kansas City. We know that it drastically affects the attractiveness of the municipalities and the towns that it's deployed in. In Kansas City, which was really the inspiration for our deployment in Detroit, when that network went live and Google announced that, we saw a massive influx of technology companies and startups and entrepreneurs that wanted to take advantage of that network. We know that young people like fast internet. Families like fast internet. We know that cable TV as we know it is changing, and more people are cutting the cord and streaming over-the-top services. We know fiber is important for our communities and for our families. Fiber has also been shown to boost property values by as much as 8%, residential property values. And that's been documented in several different studies, including one that we provided in the packet. I can't sit here and promise that as soon as the network goes live, everyone's property values are suddenly worth 8% more, but we have seen that direct correlation through, again, numerous studies between residential home values and the fiber networks that are deployed in those communities.
All right, good presentation. I mean, are there any questions from council?
I have one question. You said we would have to sign up for 20 years to do this?
It would really be your choice how long to stay in. It's really an initial capital investment. The initial term is, again, it's 20 years, but the actual usable lifespan of the asset could actually exceed that.
Now, what about changes in technology? I mean, with respect to fiber? I mean, it's possible, isn't it?
It's absolutely possible. What we know about fiber is that it has pretty much limitless bandwidth capacity. We can actually put a terabit per second down a single strand of glass right now today, which means in 10 years from now, it'll be 100x that. We're putting in 144 strands of glass for the consortium. So huge future-proof capabilities. The only really, it's not even a rival, it's a complement to fiber, is 5G. And 5G is the wireless technology that will power cell phones, it will power home internet connections, and it will power the connection in your car when our cars are driving us rather than the other way around. And that all relies on fiber. So there's a bit of a mystical, unknown art to 5G. It actually all connects to fiber. So every wireless company, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, they are building fiber, buying fiber from companies like Rocket Fiber. So there's actually no known long-term horizon threat to fiber technology. In fact, the IRS when we were starting the company 4 or 5 years ago, actually changed the depreciation guidance on fiber as a recommendation, moved it out further. I believe it was at 15 years and moved it out to 20 because there are no known competitive technology threats to fiber on the long-term horizon.
Okay. Again, a good presentation. If there is no other council comments, I think it'd be appropriate to, our finance committee really hasn't voted on this or looked at it in detail. Is that right, Bruce?
We had a presentation by these gentlemen here a month or so ago, and there's been, and we looked at it at that point, the concept and the costs of that. There's been some refinements and developments since then, especially with some other partners in terms of that. So I would make a motion at this point that we refer it back to Finance Committee for further review and report back as soon as possible to the council, hopefully by the next meeting, with a recommendation as to where we could go with this. That's what I would suggest.
Is there a second?
I can second that.
Okay, any further discussions? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Lucas. Thank you. All right. The next item is the AFSCME DPW contract approval, page 143, 144.
Yeah, just, we've met with each of the 3 bargaining units we have.
Thank you, guys.
As part of the process, we discussed the parameters for settlement, both finance and at the finance committee, and recommend approval of the contract with AFSCME. They have ratified the agreement. The only thing I would add is they certainly, like the other 2 groups, would be interested in the draft plan, but there's a unique provision. There was a provision in state law that if you did not come to contractual terms before the expiration of the contract, that you weren't entitled to retro pay. That was changed for the police and fire entities by the legislature, but again, we recommend this covers all the financial. There wasn't a whole lot of issues. Again, we with Brett's help and the union group, we have a really congenial workforce. We've established, I think, administratively, supervisory, good relationship with them. And this is true with all 3 groups, because this year's, as council may know, in the first couple of years when you guys were on board and I first came on board, I think we spent $60,000 or $70,000 in arbitration fees with one group, and neither the chief or I nor the union members could figure out what are these items on the table. But we have a much better working relationship with all 3 groups, and we recommend approval of this contract, and we'll speak to the next one as it comes up too.
And the Finance Committee's already approved this, is that correct, Bruce? The Finance Committee approved it, again, without the language at this time for a drop plan.
This is in keeping with the parameters that the Finance Committee set prior to our beginning negotiation.
Okay.
And we set the economics at the direction was 2 to 2.5, and then we came in at 2.5. That's less than the last contract, which was 3 years ago, which was 3% with a big thing. So this is consistent with that. We've got everybody on the same calendar. All unions, we bargain at one time every 3 years, so we don't have to keep going 18 months on this guy and 24 months on that guy. And we aren't behind the curve like we used to be. Remember, we'd be negotiating a contract 1 year into it, so that we've got this. So yes, the Finance Committee's recommended approval of all of these contracts.
It calls for a $500 signing bonus, a 2.5% salary adjustment for the next 3 years. Again, at this point, there's a boot allowance, but no drop. So I invite a motion to that extent.
Are we taking
That's
that
a quick
off?
motion.
Yeah, they're at this.
We're taking that off.
No, we're not taking it off.
It's just not part of this proposal.
It's not part of this.
No, that's a separate.
Yeah.
So the motion that Bob just made is basically to approve the DPW contract, right?
Oh, that's just.
I'll second that motion.
Yeah, do we have a second? The motion was made, we have a second. So, any further discussion? If not, I think we're ready for a vote. Again, it's $500, 2.5% increase for the next 3 years.
It's
And
for
then-
it's the TA that's summarized in our package, because there's other language change. It's not in there.
Well, the one sheet says on page 144, it says drop plan if approved by council.
Right, we haven't voted on that, but that's the TA that they've initialed, so that's what we should vote on, is the TA that the parties have come to,
Which has a line item for the drop plan,
if approved by council,
if approved by council.
which we haven't approved.
Okay, well then, the motion's made, it was seconded, and it's the tentative agreement here on page 144 that we're voting on. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, now we have the Public Safety Command Officer's contract approval.
Yeah, this is the same thing again, although this slightly different in that the drop plan is one of their issues, but all the other financial issues have been settled. Should the drop plan not go into effect, we have to we'd go back to the table, but basically over just several items that they've reserved. But again, this puts in place all the financials that the other groups have agreed to, and we put this in place. It's in keeping with the authority from the Finance Committee. We have it in the budget, and settles things again for 3 years. So our recommendation is to approve the financial aspects of this settlement as well.
And it's already signed on page 147. The agreement is sketched out on 146. Again, wage increase of 2.5% starting July 1st, 2018, 2.5% July 1st, 2019, and 2.5% July 1st, 2020. A $500 signing bonus with a pre-tax option. So the $500 would be allowed to be deferred into a 457 essentially plan. This is a signed tentative agreement on page 147. Finance Committee has already approved it. I invite a motion then to accept the tentative agreement. Again, the drop plan is a separate item following this.
Or it's not. The TA is signed with drop plan language being in there, because it says, see contract draft for specific language.
Got to read the fine print. I'm looking at 146.
147. Look at the bottom of 147. Just above the signatures.
Oh, I see it. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I didn't see that. Okay. After promotion procedure, service rating. Well, this is signed. The drop plan, Mark, you and I discussed, it's a non-economic benefit at this point. So we were going to accept the economics of the economic plan, the $500, the signing bonus on a pre-tax basis being permitted, the increases of 2.5% for the next 3 calendar years, fiscal years, I mean. And then everything else stays the same except for what we would call a non-economic benefit in the drop plan. So we're not accepting this because it's basically a separate motion. So we're gonna need to modify the language of the motion at this point to remove the article regarding the drop plan. Would somebody like to make the motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve the Public Safety Command Officer's contract with the exception of the drop plan language until further review.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, let's take it.
Just like, we're gonna have a presentation tonight by the command officers detailing their drop plan proposal to us. So I would, I don't know if we're prepared to vote. Will we be prepared to vote on that tonight, or do you want to defer that until a future date? Because I have a concern simply because we have a tentative agreement that's based upon this drop plan already being in place. They're gonna have to go back to the table.
What would
and
you
talk
suggest, Mark? Because, I
I
mean,
think you can approve the economics project this evening because we're planning to implement, assuming that council had approved, and then after the drop plan, you make a decision on that issue. So I mentioned earlier, if this is, the drop plan is one of their significant proposals, that would put us back at the table with other, a couple of other economic issues that would not be approved unless if you're, or you need to discuss the drop plan further after their presentation this evening. We could still put in place the basic economic proposal as you modified it. So.
I guess just table this motion until they give their presentation?
I don't, is there any harm in doing that, Mark? For 1 month? I mean, the finance committee hasn't.
No, what Matt's saying is after they they speak tonight, if we feel good about it and we make a motion for the whole contract with the drop plan, I think that's what you're saying.
I mean, I don't know where everybody else is on it, if they need more time to review it or not. I just throwing that out there as an option.
Well, I know the finance committee has not decided. I mean, isn't that the case? The finance committee has not ruled on the drop plan.
We've looked at it in detail.
And I have a phone call into the actuary, Sandy Rodham. I haven't heard from her. We traded phone calls because I want to make sure I understand the cost of the drop plan, if there is a cost, particularly if it were transferring the liability to the retiree health care fund, which is our weakest fund in our city's audited financial statement.
Unlike in this case, as I said earlier, they have the protection that if a contract negotiations extend beyond the expiration of the existing contract, they would be entitled to retro pay. It's a pain in the neck to do that, but I think you could revisit this after their presentation and decide at that point to go ahead with it, or if there's further study needed on the drop plan, you hold that item separately. But we are prepared to go either way on this.
Mark, do you think we should proceed with the motion as I originally posed it? Okay. Do we have a second for that?
Give it again?
Basically, I move that...
That's without the drop plan, right?
Without the drop plan.
I move that we approve the Public Safety Command Officer's contract with the exception of the language regarding the drop plan.
And that was seconded? Okay. And is there any more discussion? If not, I think we should take it to a vote, at least on that, and treat the drop plan as a non-economic issue to be decided relatively quickly, perhaps at the next council meeting, particularly if we get some solid numbers from our actuary, Sandy Rodham, so we can make an intelligent decision. All those in favor then of that motion with the language, Matt, that you suggested, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. And now we have the drop plan, so.
I mean, you all know, we have various members of the Command Officers Unit here, but Scott Rohr has done a lot of research on this and brought this up during our general negotiations. Again, we have a good group of, these are people we depend upon, and they do provide excellent service to us. They've been reasonable in terms of their demands. I think each of the last 2 sets of contracts that I've negotiated, we've been involved with, have been relatively simple. There's not the acrimony or going to arbitration and wasting money on attorney fees that we've had in other cases in the past. So with that, Scott, are you still here and awake? No.
I am, sure is.
Thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for hearing me tonight. I know it's been a long meeting, so I'll try to keep it brief and to the point. As everyone knows, I am Detective Lieutenant Scott Rohr. I'm the Command Association President. I have been for about 8 years and Vice President before that. First, I'd like to thank Mark for inviting me tonight and kind of repeat what he said. The relationship between the upper administration and the command members has improved dramatically with this council and with this administration in place. As was pointed out, our previous negotiations were not as smooth and were just had lots of issues, let's say. That has smoothed out tremendously with this new administration and council in place. So I'd like to say thank you for that. The papers in front of you, I supplied just a quick memorandum with a descriptive note, reference to definition of the drop plan, just a quick overview, and some of the elements that we've specifically pointed out as things that we were looking for in this drop plan. And they were designed with one intention in mind, to at minimum stay neutral or cost neutral to the city, if not cost beneficial. The drop plan itself is the deferred retirement option plan for those in the audience who aren't familiar with what it means. And it essentially is an arrangement for which the employee who would otherwise be entitled to retire and receive benefits under the employee's defined benefit retirement plan elects to, instead of retiring, enter into the drop and continue working for up to 5 years. Once entering the drop, their monthly retirement benefits will be paid into an account that becomes available only upon separation from service. The separate elements that are highlighted in this, the plan is irrevocable and limited to 5 years. The final average compensation, or the FAC, that is frozen, and your final pension figures are chosen in your election for the pension is made at the time of entering the drop plan. There is no early buy-in. And let me digress for just a moment. A lot of drop plans, when they came out, it was the next best thing, as you will, or it benefited both city and employees, or at least that was described that way. Some of those drop plans were designed with some things in it that cost the city or the pension something more long-term. And some of those highlighted in here are accented for the purpose of showing we've gone the other way with those when asking for this particular plan. So the limit to 5 years, there's no early buy-in. Some pensions allow you to buy years, get years for military service, or earn years in other facets. That is not an option in this plan. It's not an option for our pension as it stands. So there's no early buy-in, and you can only have attained your full pension after 25 years of service and age 50 minimum. There's no reverse drop option. There are some plans that allow you to work past your retirement age and then elect to take advantage of the drop without future, notice ahead of time. That is not an option of this plan we propose. The drop plan itself is going to be managed, or proposed to be managed, by ICMARC at no cost to the city. So there's virtually no management costs, there's no risk to the city, and there's no interest being asked from the pension on the funds that are in the drop plan. The poll of potential drop participants indicates that one of the main purposes of this plan, or at least from the city's aspect, or how they see it, is that it will help the retention of the command staff as well as patrol that are still in the defined benefit plan. So when polling those eligible members, we have seven command members. 6 of those 7 are eligible to retire within this contract that we're talking about right now. The part of the problem is that we've all been trained. We all like working here. We're asking for the right to stay here and continue working and still be an advantage to the city as opposed to retiring and possibly seeking work elsewhere while taking advantage of the benefits that we've paid into and were promised up to this time. So that the participants are with the drop, it would extend their time with the city up to 3 years on average. Some would be a year or so less, some would be up to 5 years, the full drop time period. The health benefits of the drop participants would then, as Mr. Mayor discussed, would be covered by the health plan of the pension itself. Now, that obviously is an expense that has to be budgeted for. The monies that would be paid for the active employee would then have to be diverted to the health care of the pension. So it's kind of just a shell game with the cost, if you will. But moreover, the cost for a new employee would be avoided. So as opposed to paying the person who's retired and not here anymore, you're going to be able to take advantage of the person who you've trained, who has a relationship with everyone here, and would continue working here for the same cost and no additional cost for a new employee. The new proposed plan would smooth the attrition rate, which, as it stands right now, it's going to be a difficult plan to cause the hiring, the training, the promotion of all the people that are going to be affected, because just the natural way that this department was arranged, there was a large group hired and a large group retired within a reasonably short amount of time. The same is true at this time. We're coming up on that time within the next couple of years. So the drop plan is pretty timely at this, right at this juncture. The drop plan will defer some costs in respect to the contribution to new defined contribution plans for new employees, and that cost, along with the deferring and the diversion of the healthcare costs, could equal as much as $36,000 per employee on the drop plan. And if you were to add that up over the entire amount of all the participants, it equals hundreds of thousands of dollars as far as when you bundle it all together, of the lack of money you're paying for new employees and the defined contribution costs for the new employees as well. And the drop will ensure a smoothing of the attrition rate and the promotion rate, it will also guarantee that everyone working here within the Public Safety Department that is not in the command structure will have an opportunity at least twice before they're even eligible to retire to be promoted. So no one will be denied the right to be promoted into the command structure, and everyone who isn't in the command structure will have an opportunity at a minimum of twice before they're even eligible to be promoted into that command structure. So within that discussions with Mark and at the table, we had lengthy discussions as to whether we could maintain neutrality or how it would be positive, and some discussions as to, I know with the Finance Committee, when I gave a presentation, there were some questions as to the actuarial reports, and I know there's some more research being done on that, but I did attach to my my documents an email exchange between Sandra Rodwin and myself, highlighting what I just read, and her response to that. And if you'll note, there's a couple things highlighted and underlined in her response that basically states that based on the elements that I just described right now, and she notes that based on the information provided, the members would not be expected. The retirement system would not be attributed to the drop. Any costs would not be attributed to the drop. It would just be natural costs through the natural process of the actuarial process, if you will. So she actually endorsed several of the items that were listed previously, and says that there's no cost expected to be included with this drop plan that we propose. So I don't know, she didn't provide any numbers because it was in a casual request to go over the elements of it, but essentially stating that the drop that we propose would not have any attributable cost or a neutral at minimum cost to the city, essentially.
Scott, did she look at the healthcare trust fund, though, the healthcare plan?
She just skimmed over it with I think,
because that's where I think that there is a cost between.
Well, it definitely is going to be a cost, because people who aren't on the healthcare now and go on the healthcare is going to be a cost, but those costs are already technically funded within the retirement, and it's the retirement that is pending for all the members. So by being able to move the active employee cost to the retirement employee cost, it's essentially just moving the cost from one to another. That said, you're also retaining that employee while paying for that benefit, while not paying for the new employee's benefit. And that's where there's appreciable savings to the city, as well as no more contributions to an active employee's DC plan, or at least deferring that cost, and no more contributions to an active employee's DB plan. So those costs add up rapidly when you put those on paper and look at the savings if you can just retain that officer. Notwithstanding that, we're at a time right now, not just locally, but in the entire United States, where hiring qualified police and within Grosse Pointe Shores public safety that are as highly trained as anyone in the state, it just makes a smaller pool of available employees even harder to get and retain. So that said, we have people that we love working for this community. Every one of us, enjoy our jobs here, and we appreciate what we have. We don't take it for granted. We want to stay, but obviously for decisions, when it comes time to be eligible to retire and continue to enjoy the benefits that we've earned, as well as possibly continuing to work somewhere else, even if it is for a short period of time, there's obvious financial gains for those members, and it makes sense for us to look at that as an option. I can tell you, there are members that are eligible that have been approached and are being offered and looked at for potential employment even within the area for jobs, because we're already trained, we're already ready to go, and it would be a huge savings for another city if they could just bring somebody on board and essentially set them up in their computer. We would actually prefer to stay here. That's what we're asking for as far as the drop plan. And you know, because it's at minimum cost neutral and because there's other advantages within this drop that are cost savings, yes, Mr. Mayor, there are some costs when you take the cost of the health insurance, but the cost for paying for that new, let's say, lieutenant, his insurance, paying for that new public safety officer's insurance, and then when you combine that up with now you're contributing to a new employee's benefits that, you know, are existing as well as continue to pay for the DV members, there are big money involved with when you combine all that together. If the drop's here, one of the bigger advantages, you don't have to pay those things, and you don't have to hire at least for a minimum of, say, 36 months for some of our older members. And myself, I look at it as a 5-year commitment for myself. So that would put me out several years before I would be leaving.
Scott, is the union going to draft a drop agreement? Who's going to?
I do have language that was looked at by the union legal department, and it's actually relatively simple when you compare, because the ICMA-RC is going to be managing it. Most of the drop plans that were used to model this plan, the pension manages it, so it becomes more of a pension. There's a liability with the management portion of it. They usually pay an interest on that money, and all those things have been removed when you bring in a third party to manage it, and it's free because it's our 457 company that will be managing this.
So the union's going to handle the drafting of the drop agreement.
It's our 457 plan or 401k plan that currently is in place. It would be handled just like that. So the funds would be transferred, and then they manage it from there. There's no other connection to that money from.
So Mark, there's no other lawyer involved? I mean, we don't need a lawyer to draft the drop plan?
This would be reviewed. One, we've talked about it with Craig Lang, who assists us with labor relations. You may recall at the last pension committee, we introduced Michael Van Overbeck, and we want to make sure at some minimum fee that the language, even though it's been put in, or is drafted and reviewed by the union, that we're in compliance with all the right rules and stuff. So it would be reviewed to make sure that that's the case. But
Like, what would the budget be for that, do you think? $2,500?
a couple grand, yeah.
Why wouldn't we use our current counsel for that? It's a big firm.
Oh, no.
That's what we got them on retainer for.
Brian and I just haven't talked about it, but in talking about this, there are, and the reason I mentioned Michael Van Overbeck and Van Overbeck, Michaud, and Timothy is because they are pension experts. And one of the great things, Brian's great to work with, but he also is, I want to say cheap, no, frugal, in that he doesn't expect to be made an expert at our expense. And if there's people that he's comfortable with, and again, we haven't talked about this, but we like to use people, you know, he came as a courtesy to the meeting with, on the Rocket Fiber with the other city attorneys talking about different language changes. And, you know, we had hoped that we could have paid one guy to do that instead of having each of us paying our own person to look at that. So there would be a review. We can certainly talk. Brian has assisted us as capable staff in many areas who just happen to use and are familiar with, like Craig, who does labor relations stuff for us, and is someone that the chief and I deal with when there's a unique issue. And those are always coordinated or run through Brian's office anyway. So.
Okay, I just want to understand the cost, you know, like of doing this. So, well, Scott, I know at this point, are there questions from council or?
What I can say, we've looked at this preliminarily, the finance committee has. I think we have some more questions that we'd want to go through and a little more analysis in terms of that. But we would be prepared by the next council meeting for certain to make a recommendation either way to council about the plan and the costs and benefits of it. There are some real savings to the community. But it goes more than that. It goes to, Matt had asked a question a couple council meetings ago. What happens if Mark leaves? What happens if this guy leaves? Where's the succession plan? Well, the reality is if we don't have a city manager for a month, we're okay.
The staff does the work.
If we don't have a mayor for a couple months, we're okay. But if we lose patrol officers, and we lose command officers. You lose one command officer unexpectedly. We have 7. You're going to incur overtime costs for those remaining officers to cover that hole in the system. So you, from a management perspective, give a lot of thought and consideration to succession planning. That is probably one of the big drivers here. That's really what we're trying to make it revenue neutral, cost neutral to the community and all that. But the big driver is succession planning. Command staff that has an orderly transition. I like the chief. I mean, I think he's great, but he's not a one-man band. And he's got to have a team. He's got to have trained guys in that. We don't have the luxury of having, 7 precincts where we can move these 3 lieutenants over and kind of that. We're a one-horse town in terms of that. So we have to be very cognizant of how we're going to transition to the next level. Because we can't have a lack of public safety officers. Okay. Anything else we can live with. Okay, we're not critical. But these guys, especially paramedics and trained people like that, they don't grow on trees. As we know, the chief takes great pride. And one other question that came up, and I want to make sure people understand. If a Lieutenant Rohr retires from our community after his distinguished years of service, he will be employed by our former chief, Mr. Poloni, Chief Poloni, more than likely. He knows him. He's a qualified, licensed firefighter, police officer, and he can go down there and work. Now, his counterpart in Grosse Pointe will retire as well. He can't come in here as a lieutenant. He can come in here as a patrolman. Okay, and he can drive a patrol car. Well, our philosophy is that we don't want to hire somebody for 3 years in a patrol car. We want to grow our own, have a crew of people that we can train, that we can develop, and who mature and grow with our community. So we don't have the option, if you will, of hiring off the street, because we've tried that and it doesn't work with our level of service. So we have to play the long game, is what I'm trying to say. We have to play the 3-year, 5-year, grow your own, and we've proven that those kind of management decisions produce superior results. We have a great crew of people, and that's what we want, who get to know us. So we'll get some more detail, but I think there's a lot of intangible benefits that really support this. And I have to give one other thing to Lieutenant Rohr. This plan, compared to what you see a lot of other communities who've done these, there's no hidden, well, I'm going to get a freebie out of this, a zinger or that kind of thing. There's really none of that. It's like you said, there's no look back, there's none of these things. It's really straightforward. So I compliment him on that.
Thank you.
All that said, I'd like to move that we table the vote on the drop plan for further consideration until the next meeting.
Why don't you make a motion to send it back to finance?
Okay.
And demand that finance give you an answer by the next meeting.
What he said.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Scott, the one thing I was going to ask, the language in the contract says that all the command officers will have fire training in 1 and 2 as soon as possible.
That's command. That's fire command.
That's
so
fire
we're already
command.
firefighter 1 and 2, but there's a higher level for command officers for fire scenes.
Because it says as soon as possible, so.
It's something we already do.
Okay.
It's just clear. It's clarification. So this chief, as much as we love him, will not be here forever. And it may not always be the next chief's priority. So from the command standpoint, we want our command staff trained.
That's good.
To the highest level we can.
I like that. Okay, I like that.
Do promotions as well.
Okay.
Right.
Because I saw that in the contract language. Okay, good. All right, good job, Scott.
Thank you very much.
Let's see, what's left?
Public comment.
Public comment.
10:05.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Harry Kurtz, 1040 Lakeshore. I apologize for getting up. I had no idea this was going to go on like this. I would have gone on agenda items because some of the stuff apparently popped up, but it wasn't listed. So please indulge me. I'll try to be as quick as possible. Maybe just in the interest of brevity, maybe they could share some of those. I'll try to be quick. These are some minutes from the Planning Commission, Tuesday, April 22nd, 2014. I think it's very relevant to today's situation. And it was something put forth by Commissioner Matuja, who unfortunately left. I wish he was still here. She's talking under new business 55 South Deeplands discussion. Matuja indicated that Mr. Stackpole had passed away and that the commission should act now on changes to the master plan concerning 55 South Deeplands. And it goes on to say a few other things. But in reference to what you brought up, Mr. Mayor, I thought it was terrific to hear what you were saying about digging into the master plan on the park, engaging the community. I think that's what Commissioner Matuja had in mind here, was to try to take advantage of the opportunity. And who knows, things might have turned out differently. If we'd heard some new ideas, we engaged the community. We've had, I think, going on, well, this was 4 years ago, and we've had some pretty unhappy residents and some pretty sad situations. And with all due respect to our city attorney, who undoubtedly did a spectacular job, we just spent, I think you told me, $90,000 on legal fees, and this battle isn't over yet. So if there's anything that can be done to avoid that type of stuff, and I think that's, in many regards, the intent of master planning, is to try to get ahead of this stuff instead of behind it. To my knowledge, this was never brought to the council, was it, to update the master plan as far as Deeplands was concerned? The people I checked with said they had no recollection of that being brought. And the master plan has not been updated in that period of time, so I guess it kind of speaks for itself. But just briefly, one thing you mentioned, Councilman Seeley, was the Grosse Pointe Shores Park Master Plan, which I think there's a city master plan, and there's the park master plan, which is obviously our biggest amenity. It's the biggest piece of property we own, and it's near and dear to everybody's hearts. This was not some window dressing formality that was put together to get a grant or grants. I don't know what happened with those court cases, but I remember how hard people worked on this, the stature of the residents that were involved, the planning, the meetings, all the things you talked about was part of this master plan. It's not some throwaway document, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of the people worked hard to put it together. By the way, there's a gatehouse in this master plan. So I just wanted to say I'm thrilled that you're taking it that seriously. I think we should take that seriously about our entire master plan for our community as well as the park. And I think the idea of getting community buy-in is important. There's a lot of people that are worried about this gatehouse plan. They're not sure if it's complete. It's certainly different from the one that people worked hard on before. And I personally, I have issues. I'm concerned about safety. I met with the park planning group, and for the most part, as far as I could tell, they all agreed with me, but they felt that they were kind of powerless to do much about it. Just answer the questions, engage the community, have people be comfortable with it, and what's the rush to get this park torn up for the rest of the summer so we can have a ribbon cutting so we can open the gatehouse and then close it down after Labor Day? I just, if you could incorporate it into your whole master plan approach, which I think is fabulous. I mean, I really think you hit the nail on the head. We got to have community meetings. They talk about charrettes and different things to get people to buy in. Then I think you've got, and even if everybody's not 100% satisfied, they see it. It's something that the community's in favor of. So that's my statement. I wish you'd seriously consider deferring, because once you do that gatehouse, which I haven't seen the latest plan, or if it's different from the one Councilman Seeley gave me, there's some huge shortcomings. It's not the same as Grosse Pointe Farms. It's not the same as Grosse Pointe Woods, who incidentally, it's reported in the papers anyways, they're having trouble with the way they operate and their security. So I just think it's worth it to us to take a breath. You're spending a fortune. The budget's $275,000 plus a donated gatehouse, and it will completely negate all the work, or so much of the work that was done on this master plan. It completely undermines so many of the ideas. So I think they should update it, no question about it, and I think it ought to be done with community involvement. And I think we ought to look at the whole community master plan and check ourselves and make sure we're doing the right thing and that we're engaging the community properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Any more public comment? No. Tina? Oh. Yeah, would you, please? The microphone can't pick you up otherwise, so.
Okay. Hi, Tina Seeley. I think that gatehouse is very important as for security for the park, with people breaking into cars and people walking in. When I go to the park, sometimes people will walk up to the gate. And I was there a couple weeks ago, and this family, like a group of 10 people, came walking up and the guy's like, "I'm sorry, you need a park pass." "You need a park pass to come in here?" And I'm like, where did these people come from? They just think they can come right in and get into the park. So I think that everybody did agree on doing the gatehouse. I don't know what the problem is that people don't like it. As for, I don't know, what is it that you don't like about it? That you think? Yes.
Oh, well, I said there's a gatehouse actually in the park master plan.
Yeah.
There are what I consider to be some very serious safety issues associated with this, and total indecision as to how it's going to be managed, when it's going to be open, if it's going to close it Labor Day, and now we're talking about the date and the other part of the I worry about the plan that the county and city show me that the walkway for the pedestrians doesn't come anywhere near the gatehouse to show their path. But also, this issue has come up recently in North Point Woods, we have the gatehouse, and they have real security problems. We haven't had real security problems. The publications, the reporting is, the security is not the issue here. Now, people are worried about people parking and going on the bus. But when we had a park manager, which we haven't had for 5 years, that could have a profound impact on how well the park is managed and how much we're on top of things. I think there's a lot to be said for people having to get out of their car and having to present themselves at a gatehouse rather than somebody in a remote building out on the edge by themselves. Maybe sometimes they'll go to the bathroom, sometimes they won't. I just think it needs more planning. And I think that's just get everybody to buy in. Why do we have to rush to tear up the park some more before Labor Day when we're not going to use the gatehouse after Labor Day? It just seems to me that it's going to affect the entire master plan. If you look at it, that road that we're going to chop in, the Farms has an access lane. They actually cut into the median. We're not doing that. So we're going to back cars up from Vernier going that way, and they're going to back over the crosswalk.
But I don't think we get that. I mean, we don't have that many people. The Farms have so many more people than we do. I don't think we'll get that. But there's a light, and there would be a gatehouse there. I'm sure that with the police and we have some really educated people who are here, that safety is huge. That's why I think we need that gatehouse. It's more for the safety.
We might need a gatehouse. I disagree that this thing's all figured out and everybody knows what they're doing and we're going to rubber stamp it and we're going to do it. And I don't think we need it this summer. It's not going to do us any good this summer. They're not going to be using it this summer. That's my only concern. It's just let's put it out for the community. Let's take a look at it and let's be comfortable with it.
And you did say it was already in the master plan before.
Not this gatehouse, not the way they're doing it now.
But see, a lot of the things that have done were not in the master plan the way it is now, like the splash pad, like the house over here that the foundation did. I was part of it.
Mm-hmm.
We have changed some of the things, and
We failed to update the master plan. There's no question about that.
I mean, I don't know. I hope that I can see the foundation and the city work well together, because that's why we're both here, And
I don't know what that has to do with the foundation, but the gatehouse and the foundation, I don't know what you're.
well, I mean, for everything that we work on, I'm saying that I think that we all have to coordinate and work well together. That's why we're all here. So with that, I will pass. Thank you so much.
Tina. Thank you. John, do you have any comments?
Mayor, Council, John Seago, 86 Lockmore. First of all, I believe this planning for the gatehouse occurred over the fall and the winter. So if people were in the immediate area during that time, they would have experienced the transgression of how this was planned. It's not just something that was willy-nilly and thrown up there. It's taken many, many hours to reach this point. Okay, regards to our park, let's be concerned with safety of our children, our children's children, our belongings, cars, our boats, protection and security, again, of our children, our children's children, from abduction, human trafficking, and also the gatehouse can serve as a welcome reception for our residents and for our guests as a pinnacle of how our park really looks at curb appeal. Also, it can serve as a management and control for safe parking for our tax-paying residents and can screen the non-residents. Currently, our park entrance does not provide safety, protection, management, control, or a welcome center or curb appeal. I personally have experienced a lack of security as my car was backed into and the guard at the small shack tried to track the person down, but they escaped and I was involved with a couple $1,000 damage that I had incurred to fix myself. The mayor also had his vehicle broken into. I believe he had a computer stolen. Another resident observed 4 men sitting in a car for many minutes. He started to approach them. They took off. And what were these people? Car thieves, burglars, child molesters, human traffickers? Who knows? As you know, we have cameras on Lakeshore throughout our city, so we do have technology at its best, and we can apply that into the gatehouse. And it's time to embrace this technology and current practices that keep people safe. Now is the time to move into the present with our park entrance, with the gatehouse secured and a private driveway. The other private parks in the Grosse Points have adopted this as standard procedure. And I was talking to some people today that their kids live in the shores and they cannot get into the woods. Nails their kids all the time. Even their grandparents lived in the woods and their kids cannot get in. They're very strict with it. We hear from some people, of course, I like it how it is, but without keeping up with the times, more and more undesirable incidents will occur. And when an unimaginable event occurs, then what? Who is liable? Those of you against the security and protection of our entrance with the gatehouse will have to look that parent or grandparent or brother or sister in the eye and say that you were against it. Well, what would we be if we didn't utilize current inventions and technology to keep up with these times? The list can go on. Start with the wheel, electricity, concrete, light bulbs, radar. If we didn't incorporate these into our life, then we would be a failing as a society. With all these advancements, if you're not going to use them, why don't we just level the park and just walk up and swim from the shore and tie our boats to trees? Get rid of the concrete, get rid of electricity. You can't do that. We have to have. This is 2018. Let's get with the times, have a beautiful gatehouse, and be done with it. Okay, you're not going to appeal to everybody's design, but this council has worked so hard on it. It's time to just move forward and get it done. Let's see, where did I leave off? Okay. Of course, now we are organized and have a beautiful park that we can benefit from technology and current methods of security, safety, and protection. The old saying, oh, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Well, that's just it. That's an old wheel. We all know as a progressive society in a city that has values, morals, education, and leadership, we can move forward. We know how to fix the wheel. We don't have to hear the squeaks in the societal vehicle that progress in the future can be better for all, and encourage more people to move into our safe, protected city and its amenities. A new gatehouse and driveway will provide us, our children, our children's children, neighbors, with a safe, reliable point of entry into our private park. A park that my taxes, your taxes have paid for and must be kept safe, secure, private, and show pride to our residents and non-residents as they drive by. So I am for you to go ahead and get this thing done and get it, it'll be landscaped, it'll be, a little glitch in the road till we reach it, and we'll all be happy, and we'll all be safe, our kids will be safe. Human trafficking is just, you can't even believe that's a special requirement now for my profession, for continuing ed. It's off the charts. So when you have all these predators that are coming into our park and willy-nilly and just in there, if once we get a gatehouse, we'll eliminate that. But for God forbid, if it doesn't happen and somebody's kid gets taken or there's a murder or something like that, people who are against it, that's up to them to sit there and suffer that in their conscience. Thanks.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor. Any more public? Please come forward. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Eddie Lazar. I'm at 15 Stratton Place. Good to see everybody. I have two points to make and just suggestions. Well, the second lieutenant was talking about the drop plan. I didn't know what drop meant. I thought it was a drop in a bucket. So just for definition, in case anybody else is as ignorant as I am, it's a deferred retirement option plan. And I did a lot of reading on it while I was sitting listening. My only question is, can we afford it? So I leave that up to the financial. It's another pension, basically.
There's no pension cost in it.
Well,
there's a
from what I
lot
was
of
reading,
variations.
that's all I wanted to say about that. Can we afford it?
It's an upfront lump sum payment.
Okay, all right, yeah. Can we afford it? The other question is, when do we start the park entrance? No, what's the date? Are we doing this this summer or next fall or?
Well, Mark, you were going to mark off the road, I believe, in 2 weeks.
2
2 weeks, we're going to have
final numbers back.
stakes up.
Thank you.
Having the contractor in place means we don't have to pay mobilization or having people come back. Rather, some prices that were, informally obtained for it. We certainly set aside the budget based on the engineer's estimate for it. But as soon as we have final numbers from the existing person, that'll help us decide how quickly it can get started. So we're going to mark it off and get ready on that stuff anyway.
And then business as usual until everything
and
else.
It's in an area that doesn't affect
minimal disruption.
Yes.
All right, thank you for your comments. Any more public comment? If not, council comments. Bob?
I have nothing, Mayor.
Matt?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. There's been this talking point going around that, this has not been carefully weighed out, that this has not been considered. I had the approval of 4 committees unanimously before I presented this to the council, which voted for it with a 5-1 vote. I went back in the history of this thing, and when we appointed a Blue Ribbon Commission, and Tina chaired it, the design that the Blue Ribbon Commission came up with is basically the design that I proposed. There was one variation. Their proposal, which ended up, because of this technicality not being able to be built years ago, was that they were going to expand Lakeshore Drive and add a lane and create a drive up to a gatehouse. And that's what the community's Blue Ribbon Commission unanimously voted for. But because we were tampering with Lakeshore Drive, which is a county road, we found that there were all kinds of MDOT problems, and they were unable to proceed with that design. My modification of it went around those issues because I went through the fence and went on the inside of the fence line and did not expand Lakeshore Drive, creating the same net result. So basically what we're doing is what the Blue Ribbon Commission wanted to do to begin with. So they had a huge consensus to do this. And as it was mentioned earlier tonight, the master plan does call for a new gatehouse. And we looked at that proposal. We looked at putting a gatehouse in the middle of the parking lot like the 2002 master plan called for. Unfortunately, and thankfully, the chief mentioned to us and brought out that we were going to lose 22 parking spots. They were going to have to expand the width of the entrance gate because we don't fit a ladder truck and we're out of compliance with state code for fire. We had to add a traffic light. We would have the guard shack's back, the guard himself in the guard shack, his back would be to most of the parking area, so we wouldn't have a set of eyes on the parking lot. People could get out of the parking lot without the guard at the guardhouse even seeing them leave. With this design, the guard is looking at the entire parking lot, and he sees every vehicle that comes in and that leaves. And from a public safety standpoint, we're going to the extra length, and Bruce came up with a great idea. We're going to have a traffic control arm at the gate so that, number one, if there are kids on bikes or pedestrians, no car can just proceed after they present their pass. That arm has to be lifted up. Also, as it was mentioned in tonight's presentation, we're going to put special marking that it's a crossing area and have signage so that the people in the vehicles know that there's a possibility there's going to be pedestrians or kids on bikes. And lastly, Bruce's idea was, now the new park passes, we're able to print barcodes on them, and we like to put a swipe feature so that we can start collecting data. Who's using our park? What's the demographic? What times are they there? What are our busy periods? So that we can enhance staffing and make sure that we're offering amenities to the community that we haven't been able to offer before. Obviously, it creates a sense of privacy, an exclusive feeling. I mean, who's kidding who? This is Grosse Pointe Shores. We want a private park. And we've been denied state grant money because we have decided to have a private park. And right now, if your child walks to the park or is riding their bike to the park and they go through that parking lot, there could be anybody off the street sitting there in a vehicle, and before something terrible happens, we need to get with the times and create some security for our community. That's all I've got. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Tina?
Well, I'm just going to piggyback a little bit about what Matt said, and this goes back to, we've all seen the paper in the last couple of weeks. Grosse Pointe Shores, Michigan was listed as the #1 wealthiest city in the state of Michigan. Okay, well, what comes with that accolade comes with car thieves who think we're easy targets, because we are easy targets, because there's a large sense of security in a town, #1, that we have an amazing police force, so everyone feels super safe, but there also is that problem that thieves and burglars and people know that we don't lock our doors, or, not me, I lock my door all the time, but that we rest on these laurels. When I first was elected, Doug Kuzak and I, we were tasked with putting a survey out to the residents. And at that time, safety and security was the #1 concern of residents. The Blue Ribbon Panel, as Matt just said, that I was part of, that was the #1 issue in the master plan, was increasing the security in our park. When I talk about this too, I just got this little tidbit this weekend. The Ford House and that wonderful piece of property down there, and the Cove. If folklore says that the reason you can't get close to the shore is because of all the rocks and boulders, that those were actually put in place by the Ford family to stop anyone from coming in to kidnap their children. So way back then, they were concerned about kidnappings and things here in a very affluent community in which we live. When we talk about safety, and this is something that I was going to bring up earlier with the chief, is that the light at the crossing here on Lakeshore, it only is activated when somebody presses the button. Most times people just drive back and forth and they don't even know that there's a light up there. Last weekend, I happened to see someone press the button. They didn't wait for the light turned, but a car was far enough away. They proceeded to cross the street. The car didn't realize that there was a light there and it had changed, because they were, I think, looking forward to the one on the corner of Vernier, and almost hit this group of people because they just weren't accustomed to the lights. Obviously, maybe somebody that doesn't live there. So I think safety, #1, we have, I don't know what we can do about that. It's just people need to wait until they see the car stop and then proceed. But safety is all around us, and I think we're all very hyper-vigilant to be safe in this community, in this world in which we live in, and that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Tina. Bruce?
Also.
Bob?
Also.
Well, 2 quick comments. Tomorrow is our first swim meet. I mean, with the weather yesterday and the day before, summer's here. 96 degrees yesterday. So we're swimming it's an away meet at Grosse Pointe City, 5:30, usually around 7:30, 8 o'clock. Then there's a picnic after the swim meet at our pavilion. Just a wonderful time to see the energy there. I think I like going because I feel younger just watching the kids. I think I get a little bit of the energy off the kids. I want to thank the volunteers for the swim meet, the swim team. Kathy Murmages is still the co-chair. Janet Ellis is a big-time volunteer. terms of making all this happen. There's many, many other volunteers, but it's a wonderful activity, and it galvanizes the children in our community. And hopefully then with the tennis courts being operational after the 4th of July, I mean, they'll gravitate right from swimming to tennis. It's going to be a wonderful happening at the park. Tina mentioned the Wall Street site that did a survey doing an analysis of 25 metrics, and they determined that Grosse Pointe Shores was the wealthiest city in Michigan. Franklin was a close second, right behind Grosse Pointe Shores. But the most amazing statistic in that survey of the 25 metrics is it's not the household income that we enjoy versus the state average. It's not the real estate value average that we enjoy versus the state average, but it was the educational level. There was over 71% of the people, the adults in this community have at least one college degree, many with 3 college degrees. And then, of course, I guess, we take it for granted, but that's the key to at least financial success in this world is a good, proper education. The college degree is still the basic, the basic building block for people to move upwards and acquire wealth in this society we live in. So major kudos to all the Shores residents. And when you see when people talk here, they're very well spoken, they're very respectful, they're very, cognizant of what's going on, and they're very interested in the current events. And that's why I think we're part of the volunteers. We love seeing the residents in this town. We work for you. So thank you for coming to this long meeting. This is one of our longest, isn't it? So our next meeting is July 17th. I invite a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you for coming.